Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting dated January 22nd. Welcome to everybody who is in the audience tonight as well. Thank you for joining. Before we get started, if we could all rise for our invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance.
Almighty God and Creator, we come before you this hour asking for your blessing and help as we gather together. We thank you again for the many blessings you have bestowed on our community. And tonight we pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of discernment and wisdom. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in our work as the elected representatives of the people of Georgetown. Help us to work together and encourage each other to excellence. We ask that we be granted wisdom and discernment in conducting the affairs of the town. We each pray to you in the manner that we were taught. Amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So we don't have a long agenda tonight, but we do have some very important conversations that we do need to have. I want to welcome Robin Olson, who is representing our Finance and Advisory Committee, who is here tonight, and hopefully we'll have some reinforcements on their way as well. The couple of conversations that we're going to have tonight are important as we go into our all-important budget season. So it's important for us, here we have Ed, to be working with our Finance and Advisory Board as we go into that budget season on these couple of topics. So first and foremost, I would like to welcome Sue Shalou. Am I okay? From Cooking Company. Sue, if you could come up.
Sure.
And what we're going to be discussing for everyone out in the audience is some insurance options that we might be able to present this budget season, as with insurance becoming more and more expensive, a little bit more complex. Hopefully Sue can shine some light on a very kind of easy subject for a lot of us these days. So Sue, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to come out and speaking with us. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and Cooking Company, what you guys do first,
Sure.
I think that would be really helpful.
Okay, so Cooking Company Insurance Services, Inc., we're located in Marshfield, Mass. I have been with the company for 31 years. The bulk of my career there has been strictly doing health insurance consulting for Massachusetts municipalities. So our company predominantly provides services to the Massachusetts public sector. 2014, the owner and founder of the company actually sold the company and stayed on for a year to run the company. And in January of 2015, I was actually named president by the new company. We're owned by Independence Holding Company, a publicly traded company. Perfect world. We have the support of a very large company, but we run the company. It's a very small, family-oriented type company that's very local to Massachusetts. So just very briefly, the company, we started providing health insurance consulting services. We also have two divisions that do injured on duty for police and fire, and also acts as a TPA for self-insured workers' comp programs. So that's the company in a nutshell.
Okay.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
So basically, as I stated, I work with really just Massachusetts municipalities, consulting, helping my clients with health insurance issues, whether they just need assistance on the financing, what type of plan to look at, or going out to bid and looking at what some of the options are. We have a vast array of clients. We have clients who are fully insured. We have clients who are self-insured. We have clients who are in the Group Insurance Commission, which is the state plan, which you may have been reading about over the weekend. We have many, many clients who are in Maya, which is the insurance arm of the Mass Municipal Association, and that is where the town of Georgetown gets their health insurance plans. So right now, you offer to your active employees and your non-Medicare retirees, you offer two types of plans. You offer an HMO and you offer a PPO. The HMO is called HMO Blue, and basically if you're in an HMO, which is where the vast majority of your employees are, you have to choose a primary care physician and get referrals to see specialists. So you must stay within the network of providers. The other plan that you offer, which actually only has 9 people enrolled, is the PPO, and that's called Blue Care Elect. You do offer that plan because under Chapter 32B, Mass General Law, Chapter 32B, you must offer a plan for people who live outside of your service area. So again, there's only 9 people enrolled in that plan, and without knowing the specifics of these people, it most likely is early retirees who may live outside of the service area.
So can I stop you there one second?
Absolutely.
We have to offer a plan outside our service area. Who defines what our service area is?
So HMO Blue is actually a local plan. I believe it covers the New England area. But for example, if you have an early retiree, somebody who retires at age 59 and moves to Florida, the HMO is not going to cover them because it's a local provider network. It's across the state, and I believe it's, which I can look, but I believe it's HMO Blue New England, so it does cover those New England states. But outside of that area, you would not have coverage under the HMO plan. Okay. In addition to that, you also it does cover the New England plans. In addition to that, you also offer what's called MedX, and MedX is a supplement to Medicare. So for your retirees and their spouses who are over age 65, are retired, and have Medicare Parts A and B, instead of being in your active plan, they take Medicare and then they enroll in MedX, which supplements Medicare. So with Medicare, which is through the federal government, they're paying the bulk of the claims. And what doesn't get paid by Medicare gets picked up by MedX. So those are really the plans that are currently being offered. As I mentioned, you're part of the MIA, Mass Interlocal Insurance Association Health Trust. And again, that's it's the insurance division of the Mass Municipal Association. And a lot of communities, they have over 100 communities participating in that trust fund. Does tend to be a lot of communities about the size of Georgetown. Some are certainly larger, but it's a good place to be for a group of your size. But I think the decision is to test the market and to see what is out there. On the active plans, you have just about 186 subscribers covered under the plan, and you have 35 retirees who are in the MedX plan. From an insurance perspective, that's not a large group. So I would say the advantage that you have reaped by being in Maya is that, to a degree, Maya pools your claims experience with the other communities that are in the Maya Trust. Based on the size of your group, they will assign 8% of credibility to you. So for example, if you had 1,000 people covered under the plan, they would say you're 100% credible. And that means that your rates, your premium rates that they give you, would be based strictly on your own claims experience. But because of the size of your group, not only do they look at your claims experience, but they also take into consideration how the trust as a whole is running. Another benefit to Maya, it can actually be a benefit or not a benefit, but is that every year they have a rate range. So for example, for FY19 at the Mass Municipal Annual Meeting this past weekend, They just voted what the rate range is going to be. So nobody will get less than a 0% increase, and nobody will get more than an 11.1% increase. And then the average is actually 4.6%. So if you have fantastic claims experience and should get a -5, a reduction, a 5% reduction in your rates, you would be at 0. Conversely, if you have bad experience or high utilization and you should get a 15% increase, this coming year it would be 11.1%. One other way that Maya sort of takes advantage of being in a pool is they will take any claim over $75,000 per person for each of their participating communities and pull those claims out of your claims experience. They then pool all of that together and then reapportion it back to the communities. So if you have a lot of large claims, you can benefit from the trust in that you could be subsidized by other communities. Conversely, if you have a very healthy group, you could be subsidizing others. Mm-hmm. So that's basically how the Maya Health Trust works. What I think the discussion has been is to just, again, let's test the market and see what's out there. I have gotten all of the information that I need in order to do that from Maya. And basically, what we would send out to the individual carriers would be monthly claims and enrollments, large losses. I had talked about Maya pooling everything over $75,000. The individual carriers would want to look at that as well. And then what your current benefit summaries are, as well as a census of all of the employees who are covered under the plan. So I have all of that information. And, assuming we get the go-ahead tonight, I'd be prepared to issue that this week.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Yes, Susan, can you kind of give us an idea of what, or a comparison of the GIC versus Maya?
Sure.
And why we're not looking at that again?
Sure. So, there's been interesting news about the GIC as of last Thursday. So the GIC, as I mentioned, is the Group Insurance Commission. It's the state health insurance plan, and many municipalities have opted to join into the GIC. As of today, the GIC actually offers 11 different plans through 6 different carriers. Blue Cross, which you currently have because they're the only carrier that is with the Maya Health Trust. Blue Cross does not participate in the GIC, and they have not for a very long time. Currently, the main carriers that are offered through the GIC are Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Tufts, Fallon, 2 different plans under all 3 of those carriers. There's a plan called Unicare, which is specific to the GIC. It's actually a plan through Anthem. And then you have Neighborhood Health Plan and Health New England, which is in the western part of the state. As of Thursday at the GIC commissioners meeting, they have made a decision effective July 1 of 2018 to eliminate the 2 plans under Harvard Pilgrim, the 2 plans under Tufts, and the 2 plans under Fallon. Okay. So basically, they're going to be offering 3 plans through Unicare. They will be offering 1 plan that's called Unicare Basic, and that's similar to the old Master Medical, for those of you who have been around for a while, the old Master Medical plan under Blue Cross. Then they will offer a plan called Unicare Plus, which is a PPO, sort of similar to your Blue Care Elect. And they will offer another PPO type plan that's a more select network. So the communities who are in the GIC currently, their enrollees are going to, for the most part, the majority of them are going to have some major changes come July. The other big change, aside from just those carriers, is that the benefits that you currently offer are richer than the benefits offered through the Group Insurance Commission. As a matter of fact, we don't even know as of right now what those benefits will look like come July 1st. there's another GIC commissioners meeting on February 1st, at which time they're going to talk about the benefit design. But as it stands right now, the deductibles and the co-payments under all of the GIC plans are greater than what you currently offer.
Gotcha, okay.
How about premium, Mr. Chairman? So the premium for GIC versus Maya.
Sure. So in Maya, every participating community has their own premium based on the claims experience and the benefit design. Because in Maya, you can actually customize your benefits. Under the GIC, the commissioners set what those plans are going to look like. The rates in the GIC, they have the same rate for all state employees and all municipal employees. With the exception for the municipal employees, I think they tack on 1/3% for administrative costs. I would say, let me just pull out. As far as the rates, the rates are lower. The monthly rates currently are lower in the GIC, and I would say predominantly for two reasons. One is that their out-of-pocket costs, their cost sharing is greater for the employees, so it's more costly for the employees in deductibles and co-payments. And also, it's a much larger group. They're covering over 400,000 members, so they have the advantage of that, spreading their risk over a larger group of people.
Is it significant, though, the difference in
I can give you an example. So just as an example, your HMO Blue individual rate on a monthly basis, and this is the full rate split between the town and employees. Your individual rate is $950 a month, and your family is $2,353. The Harvard Independence Plan, which is actually closed to new enrollees, it's a frozen plan, that individual rate is $824, and the family rate is $2,011.
Okay.
Just to give you, again, a comparison, the Unicare Plus plan, which is the plan where I think most of the municipal enrollees will go, that rate is $693 for an individual versus your $950. And the family is currently $1,656
That's a big difference.
versus your
But the
$2,353.
co-pays are all higher.
The co-pays are higher.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
So you have the
And
option,
deductibles.
Right.
with GIC, do you have the option to enter into a multi-year contract?
So in order to get into the GIC, the town would have to adopt either Section 19 of Mass General Law, Chapter 32B, or Sections 21 through 23. And there's a negotiating, you have to negotiate with your unions through what's called a Public Employee Committee. The process itself is a little bit looser under Section 19, but it's very rigid under 21 through 23. In order to get into the GIC, you have to notify them by December 1 of any year in order to get in for the following July, or you can actually notify them in July to get into the following January. The initial term of the agreement has to be either 3 years or 6 years. After that, you can do 2-year increments.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So under the current plans that we have today through Meyer, are we able to negotiate any multi-year contracts, or is it strictly on a yearly basis that?
With Maya,
With Maya,
with
yeah.
Maya, it's going to be an annual
It's gonna be
renewal.
annual, yeah.
Right. And even when you get into the GIC, even though you're locking yourself in as an employer group for a 3 or 6 year period,
The rates
every year the
fluctuate.
rates go
Gotcha,
up.
okay.
Right. And also during that 3 or 6 year period, the GIC can eliminate carriers and they can change benefits as well.
Gotcha, okay.
So.
You know,
So Sue, I think, well, I know, I mean, the reason why, that the town has reached out to someone as knowledgeable as you are is that we wanted some feedback as to how, how our plan kind of stacks up against maybe other plans, out there, whether it be GIC or any other independent plan. And, in addition, obviously, there's a cost, component, to that. We're a town that is, trying to save, every which way we can. So, my question is, what are your initial thoughts, okay, after reviewing our information, our numbers, so forth and so on, compared to maybe some other plans that you might be looking at for us?
Yeah. The downside to your plan is that you're not a large group. So that makes it a little bit tricky, because the Division of Insurance, let's assume that we just went to Blue Cross, Harvard Pilgrim, Tufts, different carriers, specifically to get a quote for you, for the town of Georgetown. The Division of Insurance does not allow the carriers to give multi-year rate guarantees or even a rate cap. So the downside with going out to an individual carrier for such a small group is that a carrier could come in here with an attractive rate, but there is nothing to prevent them on your next renewal from increasing the rates. What I would say, looking at your claims experience, generally speaking, a carrier wants to see a loss ratio of between 85 and 87%, and that basically is just a function of what are your claims versus the premiums paid in. So 85 cents on every dollar going towards claims, or 87 cents on every dollar going towards claims. You've been right in that ballpark the last 3 years. So you're running well.
Okay.
You're running well. You could be attractive to an individual carrier. Personally, I think it's risky going to a sole carrier just because of the size of the group. When you have less than 200 people in your plan, if you have 1 or 2 people who have significant illnesses, that's going to skew the claims experience because you're only spreading those claims out over 185 people. If you're a group of 2,000 employees and you have a couple of people with large claims, you're spreading that out over a much larger group. So it's less risky.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do these programs work in regional school districts that are made up of multiple communities?
The regional school districts, they would just be an employer group. As far
So
as,
we cover, let's say there's 3 communities in a regional school district.
are you referring to how that group is rated for health insurance, or are you referring to how they bill back to the towns?
Well, I'm just wondering if there's, if you could look at a group plan, like if you got
Bring a
like
few
people
communities
all
together.
being together and
Right.
buy oil, that type of stuff.
Gotcha. That's basically what you do by being in the Maya Trust,
Oh.
is you're combining, it's like, it's a joint purchase group. There is another joint purchase group which is more towards Concord, and I can talk to them. I've had initial conversations just to see if they would even be interested in looking at the town. And now that I have all of your data, I can talk to them to see, geographically, you're not really in their service area, but depending on how your claims look, that could be a possibility. But what you're talking about is exactly what you do right now through Maya.
At Doug's point, though, if I could, Mr. Chair,
Absolutely.
have you seen other communities consolidate and, then go out to an individual carrier to get the volumes up? And
There are several joint purchase groups across the state, and that's basically what they have done. So, for example, the one I was just referring to in the Concord area is the Minuteman Neshoba Health Group. There's one out of Wellesley called the West Suburban Health Group. There's one on the South Shore, Mayflower Municipal Health Group. And that's exactly what they've done, is they have actually formed a joint purchase group, which is to combine the claims experience,
Okay.
and then they provide the benefits to all of those participating communities.
So does
Would you be able to start your own though, or no? I mean, or
Yeah,
if
yeah,
we
you
reached out
could.
to neighboring towns?
Yeah,
and-
you could. Where it's a little bit complicated in, let's say that you were, I'm just going to simplify and say that you were interested in joining in with one other community. If your claims experience is here and their claims experience is here, they're going to want to join you, but you're not really going to want to join them, because when you join a group, it's going to bring that to the midpoint. So it's a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
So there's strength in joining in with Maya because it's multiple cities and towns versus, a collaborative between us, Salisbury, Rowley, whereas we're getting the benefit of all the cities and towns. How many cities and towns are in Maya group?
It's
did you say?
over 100.
So rather than 3 rated experiences, we're dealing with 100.
Right.
Which could benefit us, could not.
It could go
We just
either
don't
way.
know.
Correct. Correct.
I was gonna say, do we know if what a community our size, are we supplementing or are we getting supplemented?
We'll know when we get your rates.
To me, your rates look fairly comparable with Mass Help. Can I ask a couple questions, Mr. Chair?
Hold on one second, Doug. I know you had a question.
No, I'm
That you
all
want-
set.
Oh, you're all set. Then Gary, you get the floor.
I had pretty much 2 questions. One of the things that I had hoped to look for, and when we had the rep from Maya in here, was to perhaps come up with a 3rd plan of a higher deductibles and that things to add to ours. That if the employees so chose, we'd benefit from it and they'd benefit from it, especially if they're healthy individuals. At the time, Maya said that they did offer that to some, but I don't believe they offered it with the 2 plans that we were taking. So I had hoped that perhaps we could make some headway there. And then the other question that I had was, if we put this out for the bid, are there that many groups out there that can bid, especially with the Blue Care, that is going to be I take it that is, in my experience, that's anywhere in the country. You can go see a doctor anywhere you want. And I don't think that there's that many groups out there. Well, I guess you'd know the answer. Are there that many that can bid, and do we have to offer that?
Yeah, so the predominant carriers that we would go to, if you decide that you do want to go out to bid, would be Blue Cross, Harvard Pilgrim, Tufts. Fallon used to be more of a Central Mass plan, but they certainly have expanded their Fallon Select plan. So we can go to all of those carriers, and they all can offer a PPO type plan. So the answer is yes, they can do
On
that.
PPO?
Yeah, the Blue Care Elect is your PPO, which covers, it's national,
Okay,
national plan,
okay.
and they can all offer that type of plan.
Okay.
As far as your first question, which is a great question, Maya has taken the position in the past that they will offer a high deductible plan as long as you have a certain percent of your employees enroll in that plan. When you first offer a high deductible plan, and this is assuming it's not a total replacement for what you currently offer, but an additional plan, like you
Yes.
said, high deductible plans are only starting to be discussed in the Massachusetts municipal world. So I believe when cities and towns are starting, and they are just starting to consider offering them, I think the enrollment initially is going to be very low, and it's going to be slow in getting people to transfer into those plans. But that being said, I think it's a good idea to bring it on board because, number one, you may have people who, more likely your younger, healthier people would be interested in that type of plan. Maya is just starting to pilot a program where they will allow a municipality to offer it in addition to the existing complement of products that you already
I know
offer.
they said when they were here last year, they did offer it, but not with the 2 plans that we
They would
took.
do it
We
as a
had-
total replacement.
Yes.
I would say this year you probably could not get it as an additional offering, but maybe next year
But can we use that as a negotiating tool?
we can.
Okay. But would we have to change all of what you've done here and have in front of us for tonight?
I would just add to it.
Oh.
Was this that individual plus one, is that what you were referring to?
It would be, see, right now, you've basically got two plans. You've got your Blue Care Elect, and you've got your HMO Blue. The medics is your retirees, okay? So that's everybody that's hit 65. So what you would do is you would offer a third plan.
Oh, for
that-
both individual and
that-
family.
And it would probably still, it would be, I'm not familiar with them, but it's on the state, who I buy my insurance through the state because I don't belong to any plans. My wife and I are sort of kind of, what do you call them, self-employed in a way. Who we work for don't offer us insurance plans, so we always bought it through the state. And, you know, they have what they call platinum, gold, silver, bronze, you know. So
Sure.
your Blue Care is probably in that rate, your platinum. And I'd say that is what you're getting is very comparable with that. And your HMO is somewhat comparable with their HMO, I think it was the silver or the gold. Okay, so you would basically be offering a lower tier. I mean, you've got on your other page, if you go forward, you've got some of your deductibles. It's basically gonna, it's basically your out-of-pocket deductible. I mean, many times if you go to visit the doctor, did you have in there what it is right now for the HMO? Is that on here somewhere?
Do you
Oh, yeah,
have,
it's right there. 10 for a primary, 15, then 20.
Depending on where your provider
That
is.
might be, that $10 to go to see a primary care might go up to 30, okay? But your savings are tremendous. And if you're a healthy individual, like you said, many times younger people, but also people that don't have families, when you get older, your children are out, they've got their own insurance. That's where I am. And it's scary to make the move. But we made the move, and the cost savings are tremendous. And typically it goes hand in hand. What you're giving up and what you pay, if you do get sick that year, you're probably gonna pay the same, because that's just about where your out-of-pocket comes up, where you don't pay your, like here, you've got an out-of-pocket maximum of $2,500. That could be higher. My wife this year took a plan that had $7,500. I mean, that's
Your-
high, but,
your-
I mean, the savings to go to that, so.
Admin cost to the town, though?
And as
wouldn't
she
that
said,
increase?
it's a great question,
The more
but
plans you
we don't
add.
even know if we
It
can
shouldn't
get
cost
anyone to
you.
buy in, but if we could get, if we could get some of the others, Maya may not buy in on it, but if some of the others did, you might get some better.
the other option too is to take a look at your existing plans and tweak some of the benefits. So what, if you decide that you do want to get quotes, we can ask for quotes based on the current benefit level, and then we can say, if you introduced a $300 deductible on the existing plan, how would that affect the rates? Or if you introduced a $500
See, that's where
deductible.
we get in, that getting into negotiations, correct? Because,
Any benefit change that you make, you would have
Yes.
to negotiate.
but if we did the third thing, we wouldn't have to, because we're really not changing the benefit. We're just offering another plan.
There might
if
be
they
some
so
type of
choose.
bargaining, but
Yeah.
a less, less intense version.
What if we were to look at the plan that Maya has, that, because I know last year they said if you had this, if you took this, you do get that third one. Okay? So, we had that information in front of us last year when he was here. That would mean negotiations by all means.
It would. So what we were looking at last year was a limited network.
A limited network plan. Okay.
And but that would have opened the negotiations.
Right.
But could we include that in the bidding?
You could.
Perhaps if we could include, if we went to that, it would open up negotiations, but our negotiations are pretty much as we choose, correct? I mean, we've done this once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
we just have to negotiate, the only thing you really negotiate is the amount of savings.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they can get up to 25%.
Yes. So that's really what it ends up, because we pretty much have the right to say, we're doing this.
Relatively speaking, we have to negotiate in good faith,
Correct.
but
Yes.
we don't have to offer them more than 25%.
So.
They were asking for 100%.
Yeah,
So
but I mean-
we had a little divergent of interests there.
I mean, for me, that's something that I'd like to, I'd like to see, you know, that the figures on that, if we were to go down that road, at least we would have more to compare. And it would help us to make a decision if we so choose to go that way, because as you've said, if we end up taking a plan with Harvard Pilgrim, there's a chance, because it's a change, that we're gonna have to do that negotiation anyways,
I think
because
so.
we've just now changed carriers,
No.
As long as it's,
equal to the state standard,
yeah.
but isn't
It
the other?
depends what your collective bargaining agreements,
The agreements say nothing
they say nothing about the carriers.
about health insurance, period.
Okay, so if you used sections 21 through 23 to negotiate benefit changes, you can negotiate, after you go through a very specific process, you can negotiate up to the copays and deductible levels of the GIC plans. But I think to bring in a limited network plan that you were talking about, or the high deductible plan,
Yeah, that was
The-
also part of it.
yeah,
It
the
is
high,
a-
the high
they are
deductible
also
plan,
sometimes-
because those deductibles are higher than the GIC, you really can't negotiate that under 21 through 23. And I'm not really sure about the select network plan, but that, and I'm not an attorney, but that might just be impact bargaining, basically saying, we want to bring a high deductible plan on as an additional offering, or a limited network plan as an additional offering.
Many times what you're talking about also, though, the limited network plan, you can have almost the same deductibles, it's just you have a limited network
Correct.
that you can go to.
Correct.
So, yeah, so
And then the
that's
pri-
almost like another option other than going with higher deductibles, is you go with the limited network.
Right. Now, again, because of the size of your group, I don't think that, you know, I'm just gonna use Harvard Pilgrim as an example, and I'm not speaking for them, but I believe they're not gonna say to you, you can offer an HMO, a PPO, a limited network, and a high deductible plan. I don't know, and that might get back to your question before. I don't know that they're gonna allow you to offer 4 different plans. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but we won't really know that until we go
Can
through
I
the
continue,
exercise.
Mr. Chair?
Absolutely.
I just lost my question.
All right, we'll come back to you.
I have two.
Yeah.
I have two.
Go ahead, go ahead.
That'll help you, Gary.
It'll come back,
No.
well, you may have it.
So within each plan, though, we have individual and family.
Correct.
What about 2-person?
Okay, this question gets asked all the time. So right now, Maya determines how much revenue they need to generate. Let's say it's $1 million.
Right.
They split that up between an individual rate and a family rate. What happens when you offer an individual plus one, you still have to generate $1 million, but you're calling out the 2-person families and you're charging them a lesser rate, which means that you have to bump up the rate of the family contract to make up for that difference. And it's a fairly substantial increase. From an actuarial perspective, the 2-person family generally is it's a higher risk, more costly family than the younger families with children, because it tends to be the early retirees or people whose children have already left.
Right.
It tends not to be, you know, younger couples, because if they don't have kids, they would generally each take out 2 individuals with their own employers.
Okay. And the second comment I had on that really stripped down plan that Gary's referring to,
They're not that stripped down.
I think you would get more buy-in if the person was paying 100% of the premium. Because we're subsidizing 65%, it may not be much of a difference in a cost savings for the individual. especially if they're having a pre-tax too on top of it. So it may not be, that's maybe why, just as a comment, maybe why people aren't taking those stripped down plans. Because they're saying, well, I'm only saving 35% of the money and I'm taking it out pre-tax. What am I really saving, in terms of premium? It's really not a huge, again, if it's $50 a week, that may, entice somebody, but I don't know what those numbers are, but.
No, just look at the comparison here though, and how many take that highest one? Only 9. So if you go by that, I mean, and you're talking a difference of $500, but only 9 people chose, and it's not
Well,
even
that's
costing them that.
Yeah, but that's based on.
Well, that's a month actually.
Right, so it's not really a huge number. Again, if you're self-employed and paying 100% of it, it's a big number. But when the town is subsidizing 65%, it's 65% less to say.
Yeah, and really, until we see what the premiums would be
Right.
for this plan
Right.
versus the limited network plan, we
Right.
don't know what that would be, if there's enough of a
Incentive for
financial
people to-
incentive.
The question came back to me. If when you're
Totally.
done.
David,
I'm done.
It was probably, maybe either one of you can do it, and it was to bidding, Mike. I mean, this is a high figure. If we put this out, I mean, personally, I'm a little nervous about leaving Maya. Even from what every time I hear more, and from what I've heard tonight, we're going out on our own. Could look good this year. One person gets really sick. Next year, it could hit the fan. If we put this out to bid, and some come in much lower than Maya, can we still stick with Maya? Or because we've now put this out to bid, where are we as a town?
Well, we're not required to bid health insurance.
Okay,
It's exempt from the procurement laws.
okay,
And the way Sue's approach is more of an informal bidding process.
okay,
So we're not
all right,
stuck with the low bid.
okay.
And I would actually, which I didn't, I'm driving up here tonight, I thought about it, I would put a disclaimer
Okay,
on here basically saying health insurance does not have to be bid under 30B, and the town can make whatever decision they want to make.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Does Maya know that we're,
Oh, Sue's been talking with them.
Yeah.
okay, so they know?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's funny how, companies, when they realize they're against another competitor,
Right.
how they sharpen their pencils rather than if they know they're not,
Right.
against the competitor.
And just so you know, Maya, knowing that if you do decide to issue an RFP per se to get quotes, Maya will not give you your rates until the RFPs are due. So they're not going to give you a heads up on what their rate renewal is going to be before the other companies bid.
So what has your experience been, if we do go out to bid and we go with an individual carrier? From a percentage basis, do you find that second year, what percentage would you put on the probability that the policies or the premiums will climb?
I think it's a good probability. Just because anything can happen with your claims experience and you're a small group. So it would make me nervous, to be very honest.
If they went up on rates, is it something that they would have to justify that climb with us, or can they just say, you know what, rates are just going up? It doesn't matter what, if we were between 85 and 87%,
They generally they'll give you a rating calculation to justify it, but if they also wouldn't have a lot of claims experience before they would have to issue you the rate, because there's a couple of months of lag time. So for example, for claims that are incurred in December, they probably won't see all of those claims until February or March, and you would need to get your renewal in March. So they might only have 6 months of experience, which means that they would take the Maya claims experience and meld that into their rating calculation. So it just depends on how conservative they want to be, since they wouldn't have a lot of new claims for you. It could go either way. Very honestly, I haven't done this for other smaller communities, so I really don't have the experience to share with you as to what has happened with other communities.
Funny, I was just about to ask you that. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Sue, if we do leave Maya, we have to stay out for 2 years, is that correct?
I believe so.
So, if I can,
Yes, sir.
again, so if we just to throw in a third policy and ask for it, could we just sort of put it as here's the two that you've gotta kind of go by the standard by, and get creative in the third one? Could you sort of bid it out that way? or-
I think I personally would be more specific
Okay.
in the bid. So number one, so we can compare apples to
You
apples.
think we should do that? I mean, do you think that would be a good move?
If you decide that you want to go out to bid, I would suggest adding another plan
Okay.
so that you have a lower cost option.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
Gary, can I just chime in for a second?
Yep.
So from a process perspective, right, do you think it's more advantageous for us to just have Sue negotiate with Meyer on our behalf rather than doing a complete bid? I mean, we can threaten if we don't like the numbers, or if you feel like they're just leading you along. I mean, why go through the whole process of bidding when we know that it's pretty high risk to take and just go to Blue Cross ourselves, and we're out of Maya for 2 years, and our only other place that would accept us probably would be GIC if we didn't like what we seen in the third year of, if, say we went to Blue Cross on our own, right? So to me, would it be more, advantageous for Sue to work with Maya to get us the best possible bid and the best possible rate, knowing that if things are starting to go a little sideways, then I'll go back to the selectmen and they'll just do a bid with everybody else. I mean, I think from a strategy perspective, that may work. Too bad we're in public session for this, but.
It helped last year.
I think, David, to do that, then this board has to be, along with our, finance and advisory board, we have to have a goal and a target, that we want to hit, before we can say, okay, because, Sue can, go out and get, something that's a 5% increase, and, Sue might think that's good, but, this board might feel that, we needed something better than that, So I think before we do that, we would have to have discussions regarding what we would want to see. I would think, yes?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it's based on the numbers, and it's based on the pool. So we're in a pool with 100 other communities, and based on all that calculation, that's pretty straightforward stuff. I don't see where they have much room to really negotiate rate, to be honest. I mean, we're A paper, I'm in the banking industry, so this is an 800 credit score to me. We're 800 credit score, so we should get a better rate. But a lot of it, once you're in the pool with everybody else, you're helping out those communities that have had a bad year. And then conversely, if we have a couple of bad years, we want to get helped out too. So this doesn't seem to me that there's a lot of room for much negotiation, other than, back to Gary's point, is the plan design piece, where, we want to save, we want to make sure that we're at zero this year. If to get to zero, what do we have to do? We may have to tweak the deductibles, which again, we have to go back to plan design issues. Although we can tweak those deductibles without having to go back for negotiation.
You do have to negotiate.
As long as they match GIC though, right?
You still have to go through
Still
the
got to go.
formal process of negotiating.
Right. So, understanding it all a lot better, by the way. I think you've done a fantastic job of updating, at least me.
Thank you.
I can speak for the rest of the board. This is so much more knowledgeable than we've ever had in the 9 years that I've been here. So I actually almost understand it now. So and to me, it doesn't sound like there's much room for negotiation in that Maya, the Maya piece, because of all the calculations, the pooling, and
You never know.
Well, okay. So that's why we have you. See,
You never
we
know.
have you as the handler for us to get out there and say, all right, look, this is an 800 credit score. What are you going to do for my client? I think, I'm comfortable to maybe suggest that type of approach. Again, tell me why that might be not what everybody else is thinking, but my approach
I
would
would
be.
just say if we had a goal, just to Joe's point, if we if we knew that we wanted to hit 1% or 0 or 2, I mean, we just gotta come to consensus on what we want to come out of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do have, a concern. So the second year, we could climb, right? And, and we'll have to, we'd have to take that. But what if in the first year, Maya came back and said, all right, we're going to climb, or excuse me, we're going to have a 5% increase, right, per se. And yet we went to a individual carrier, okay, and they offered us a 2% increase, okay? So now we're saving 3%. Second year comes around, and all right, and they hit us maybe with a 8% increase, from there, right? So we've already saved 3%. Don't forget in the first year.
Right.
So now we have another 8%, okay, in the second year, okay. So the difference is 5%. My point is, in the first year, we might be saving enough where it still might be beneficial even after the climb in the second year, all right, based on where Maya comes in.
Here's my only
Which
question.
is why we need to come up with some consensus of where we want to be.
The danger of that, though, would be, and I'll go back to Sue, is this. Again, we're an 800 credit score today. We go with Blue Cross on our own. They love us. The second year, we have a couple of people that had some major illnesses. Now we become a 650 score. At 650, our premium will go up, and maybe we saved, maybe we broke even. But in that third year, when we go to look, if we want to move, we are now flagged as a 650. And to go to another, and this is where I'm asking you, will that hurt us to jump back to Maya or jump back to another carrier, because our experience for that 1 year is really going to hurt us?
It can.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
that's
a good- no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You're in the same business as I am. Once you're a 600 credit
I mean,
score,
I'm just talking about blending,
Takes time.
2 years. I mean, you could
Right.
have, 1 year where we're
year
saving.
3 would bother
and
me,
then-
Joe. That's where I would be afraid of year 3,
Yeah.
more so than anything.
To that point, Maya is still doing the same thing as Sue said in the beginning. Maya came up with, I believe, was that Maya you were talking about? That they could charge some towns 0 and some more than
Correct.
11.4, and that you're saying 4.6 something as the
Is
average.
the average.
Right.
So that's what we're seeing as an average increase, let's say.
Yeah.
That's what we can look at as an average for next
Oh,
year.
yeah,
And
based on that,
That's
we
six,
probably are
that's
4.6.
0.6 higher than we got last year, that
Right.
we were thrilled to get that last
Right.
year.
Yeah, we were.
I mean,
We were. So, what I'd like to do now is I know we have a question from some of our FinCom members.
I just had a question
Wayne
to Dave's
Snow.
comment about year 1 and year 2. Wayne Snow, Finance Committee, year 1 and year 2. We really can't go anywhere. You're going to have to stay where you are for 3 years to be year 4 before you can go someplace.
Right.
So you're looking at,
So
in
we
that,
really get stuck.
because the way the physical years work.
The power of Maya is you're using an experience rating over 100 communities, whereas you're not. You go independent, man. You're on your own. I mean, we could roll the dice and be at that 85 to 87% for the next 10 years and do really well. It just takes one at 187 or 186 enrollees. It takes 1 or 2 people to have a major cancer issue or a major heart issue or whatever the disease is. Boy, we're really up against it. It's really going to really hurt us. Whereas 100 communities, we have 2 people, we may jump to 95%. It may drop our premium 3 or 4 or 5%, but it's not going to be. If you're independent, man, you're that independent. I've had some experience with independent experience rating in a small group. Man, you get 1 or 2 people sick, you're in.
Well,
big
so
trouble.
that's my next question. So what would it take for the needle to kind of sway that far?
Not a lot based
Not a
on
lot?
the size of your
Yeah, we're
group.
small,
And
but
again,
yeah.
you know what? If you had premature baby,
Yep.
you had, significant cancer situation, things of that nature, it would impact your group because you're small. So
Right.
the 2 protections that you have under Maya is the rate range and that cap, and the fact that they're pooling claims over $75,000.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Robin.
Hi, good evening. Robin Olson, 113 Thurlow Street, Finance Advisory Committee. I have a couple of questions for you, Sue, and I thought you've done a great presentation. Within the Maya group that we currently participate in with our 200 or so participants, is there the option, I know that Gary's mentioned adding a third plan, do they have an option where you can choose you keep your HMO, you keep your PPO, maybe you choose to structure the plan differently, and I would propose, instead of saying adult plus one, perhaps adult plus children, because I've seen that in different insurance cost structures result in lower premiums, even with that cost sharing piece that you have in place. Is that an option that Maya offers?
I have not seen that they offer that to any communities. I do know that they would do an individual plus one.
Okay, so
I
they
don't
stay
know
with
if
that
they would
higher
do
tier.
an individual plus children.
That
But
tends to skew.
yeah, it's still, keeping in mind that they still would have to generate that theoretical $1 million that I talked about.
Right.
So it would impact the family rate.
Okay, so then my next question would be talking again along what Mr. Fowler brought up. He was talking about high deductible health plans. Does Maya have an option of a high deductible health plan with an HSA?
Yes.
Because if you have an HSA, that would be something that would entice your younger potential population into investing and rolling over that HSA, investing it however they see fit, and keeping that money aside for whatever they may need to have it for.
Yes, so typically high deductible plans do not work unless you offer it along with a health savings account and have the employer fund a portion of that HSA.
Okay.
Especially here, you don't have any deductible whatsoever, so people aren't even used to a deductible plan. And
Okay.
then a high deductible is much more drastic.
Okay.
Maya is starting to pilot. They're going to pick a couple communities and,
Okay.
and do a pilot with the introduction of a high deductible plan, and they will actually require that the town contributes something to the HSA.
HSA, so
Yes.
they can, for the first non-well visit or whatever it may be, they cover that.
Robin,
Question.
can I stop you one? Do you know what that percentage that they generally require from the town?
I don't know if they have decided for sure, but it's probably in the vicinity of 50% of the deductible.
Okay.
Now, is there a chance? I know that they have to that we have to negotiate with the different contracts and the things that you have in place. Sorry, I have so many questions.
That's okay.
Is there the ability to tweak? I mean, have you done comparison on out-of-pocket maximums for this group, for their deductibles, those sorts of things, to tweak those within Maya to get them better rates?
Yes. So actually, we had done a comparison of the town's current plans against, just to show how it compares against the GIC benchmark plan.
Okay.
So just as an example, your plans do not have a deductible.
So none of them have a deductible.
Right. The
Okay.
GIC plan is $500 for an individual or $1,000 for family.
Okay.
The GIC plans have an out-of-pocket max protects people if they have very large
Exactly.
claims.
Yes.
Your out-of-pocket, and the majority of people will not hit that because it's so far removed, but it's a protection nonetheless.
Right.
Your plans have a $2,500 for an individual or $5,000 for a family. The GIC is $5,000 and $10,000.
Which is fantastic when I think of my own personal health coverage from a top 50 company in the United States, and my out-of-pocket maximum for my family is $13,000. So I guess my next question would be, and I have two left, and I think this might be more of a Mike question. If you want to adjust deductibles or any percentage or out-of-pocket maximums, does that have to be negotiated with the unions?
It does.
Okay, so that any shift you'd make to where the employee has to be more of a consumer about their health care will be a long process.
We have enough time to do it before renewals,
Okay.
but it is a lengthy process.
Got it.
But by doing it this time of year, we can pull it off.
All right, and then my last question for Sue. In going out, if the selectmen decide to go out to bid for this, is part of the services that you offer to Georgetown as the broker, modeling for the employees? What I mean by that, modeling the different coverage, and also as part of the census gaining since they are in an HMO, do you get who their primary care provider is and use that as part of your analysis, whether it's Harvard Pilgrim or Tufts, to ensure coverage?
Yes. So if the town decides that they want to go out to bid, the first step I would take is to get quotes and see if anything looks attractive. If any of the carriers look attractive, I would have a list of the providers that are being used by your employees, and we would send that out to that carrier to ask them to do a disruption analysis to make sure that the providers are covered.
Okay.
And I do just want to say one thing, I'm not a broker, I'm a consultant. And the reason
okay.
I just want to make sure that you understand that is because I just get paid a flat fee to help you all out. I don't take a commission on health
Okay.
insurance, so anything I do is, I'm an impartial party.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it, and thank you for letting me ask questions.
Hey, Joe, can I just ask a quick
Sir,
question?
if you can identify yourself first.
Vin Milano, 7 Horseman Circle. It seems like we're talking about this near term. Should we be thinking about this in 2 phases, near term and far term? If we have to negotiate with unions, Mike, should we be strategizing about maybe where we want to be 5 years from now also? And maybe that'll help us as we start thinking about what the near term is going to look like and give us better direction when we're thinking about negotiating. Does anybody else do that, Sue?
Yeah, I think with healthcare so in flux right now, people say to me all the time, "Can you do a 5-year projection or a 10-year projection?" And basically, my answer is no, because I don't know what healthcare is going to look like in a few years. But yes, what you're saying, it does make sense, and I think that's part of the conversation about benefit design.
Yeah.
Because, again, because plans are benchmarked against the GIC as they increase their deductibles and co-payments. If you do stay stagnant, you're getting further and further and further away from what you can do to try and control costs.
So would you have any recommendations of where maybe the committee should be thinking about 5 years or 8 years from now?
That's
I
too
mean-
far.
Okay.
No, I chime in on that. What I think, and that's a good exercise for us to look at. We've looked at our budget out as far as, 10 years, Mike?
10 years.
So what we should be looking at there for a goal is our healthcare costs to be X% of total revenue or total expense. So we don't want to exceed, I'll just pick a number, 30% of gross, gross receipts. I think that's the way you may want to approach it from a big, a
Yeah.
high level perspective. And you got to healthcare is you just don't know where it's going to be 3 years from now.
No, you don't.
But I think we should set some of those type of goals to say it's back to Joe's point, we don't want to exceed X% of our total expenses in healthcare, if at all possible. I mean, we may have some of these things like snow and ice we don't have control over, It's almost like that. It's almost like an act of God with healthcare lately, because you just don't know.
But at least then,
then you have
you'd
a
be able
number.
to strategize.
Right, exactly.
What could
No,
I
I
do
agree. Yep.
if that happened?
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Selectman Sadler.
Yeah, I had a question from a plan design perspective. Do we have either information on all our plans and what benefits are there that the employees do or do not use? Or do we go out to employees and say, hey, for this particular plan, are you utilizing XYZ benefit of it? If we find out that we have this great plan, but there's a large portion of it that isn't a benefit to employees, and that might give us an idea of how to structure the design on it. Do you go out? Is there information that the carriers have for us to look at that?
So I would say that all health plans cover, general categories, so you're going to have inpatient coverage and outpatient surgery and high-tech imaging and, office visits and prescription drugs. Mm-hmm. We can get utilization reports from Maya. I have not done that in my role yet, but
Okay.
we can get utilization reports to for example, say, how is your emergency room utilization? Is your ER utilization so high? Maybe that benefit needs to be tweaked so that people aren't using the emergency room in lieu of a doctor's office visit. So that data is available.
Okay.
Yes.
Along those lines
we
too, Steve?
actually have done that in the past. And we specifically, using that example, we saw where our employees were overutilizing emergency rooms. So we put in $100 deductible for emergency rooms.
Okay.
The rest of the world is about $250, by the way, just to let you know.
Yeah.
Let's get in check with reality here. But back to Steve's point, have you seen any municipalities self-insuring that piece? For instance, what if we said the the emergency room deductible is 250 or even 500, just for discussion purposes. And that what we'll do is if just because it's 500, if you do use it in a true emergency, that we'll reimburse you up to 65%, the town's share. We've done that at my business, and it's saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if an employee, for instance, even my own case, I've had a procedure done on my back. It's $500 every time I have it done. I get a 75% reimbursement from the company. Over the long term, we were paying so much in premium to cover that it was ridiculous. So, have you seen any municipalities self-insure a piece, a blended self-insurance with this?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily refer to it as self-insurance because
But-
you would still insure it under the plan.
Right,
But
but-
as an example,
High deductible.
if you use the section
copay.
21 through 23 process to negotiate increased copays and deductibles, as Mike said, is a requirement that you provide up to 25% of the total first-year savings and mitigation funds.
Right.
So some communities have said with that mitigation money, we will reimburse certain copays.
To
So-
specific employees or across the board?
Across the
reduction?
board, but the specific copays across the board, and then people can apply to get that reimbursement.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we should definitely look at to keep the cost down, if we can.
In 2011, this was before the change in the law. We actually had a situation where if we changed our plan, we would have saved, we would have had a 10% reduction in our premium. And we said, we got the 10% reduction because we increased the premiums. I mean, the deductibles. But we said, we'll pay the deductible.
Right.
And they said, no.
Yeah, the union.
You know, you just want to,
Well, that was
you want to
7 years
give them a
ago.
don't
I
slap.
remember, I was part of that.
Yeah.
I remember exactly.
We could revisit.
Just on the line.
Hold on. I was there.
And the one union
I was slamming my head against the wall.
Said-
Are you kidding me?
no thank you.
Doug, go ahead.
Couple of things. Do any of these insurance programs that we offer have incentives for healthy lifestyles or changing, encouraging the insured to quit
Exercise.
smoking,
Yeah, they,
different things like that?
The plans
Go to
have
the gym.
a fitness benefit built in, like $150
Yeah.
for fitness. Honestly, I would have to defer to the town because I don't know if you're currently doing any wellness programs through Maya and
I
if they
just didn't know
provide
if
any
offering
incentives.
those
My plan, we did
helps with the premium. and all.
$500.
Janet is the de facto wellness coordinator, and she runs programs all year long and at no charge to the town, and there are rewards involved to the individuals that take part in them. And Maya also includes in the package, it's not free, but they pay for a company to provide employee assistance program. So, for mental health or for any disasters or just for somebody to talk to. So we have a wellness program and a EAP program.
See, my company, we have, once a year, if we go to our primary care and our blood work's good and our blood pressure, all, those vital signs, we get up to a $500 reimbursement directly to the employee in the form of a prepaid Visa card. So, do we have any benefit like
No.
that?
That's what I was alluding to.
Yeah, well, we're paying for it in our deductibles, but I mean, copays.
Yeah.
I mean,
There
specialist
is some
copays are
people
$40.
can be involved with, like, there's one going on now, and it may be like a $50 card, but if you participate in 6 out of 10 programs, some of them are just online or just healthy ones, and people can do them online, and they'll get like a $50 gift card, but they have to sign up for that.
Put the effort
but
into it, right?
Right, you have to, it's not, but they have to participate, so.
Well, the state of insurance is such that I try to look at it through the eyes of an employee, which I used to be. And I would think that what we really want to look for is something where the employees see that it's stable. We all know health insurance is going to go up every year. We try to manage the cost, but they need to see something stable. If we make too many changes,
Right.
then like Mike was just saying, this, they may say no because it's too confusing. So we have to look at the stability and through the eyes of the employees.
Gary, did you still have a comment?
It just all got answered.
Okay, great.
Thank you, though.
Sure. To our finance and advisory members, Chairman Ed Dobie, I know you're staying quiet, which tells me that the wheels are just spinning. Any,
Just waiting his turn.
any feedback from you guys on this?
Not at this point. I think we've been plotting, but we don't have anything specific. Actually, to be perfectly honest with you, with the exception of Robin, most of us have been involved on the periphery of the insurance. We only see what the results of the yearly increases are. We are not usually in at this stage of it. So for us, as much as anyone else that's sitting in the selectmen, we're learning as well. And that's the best answer I can give you.
You mentioned, Joe, about a range. So I just throw this out for discussion. What if we said to Sue, our range for this year is between 0 and 2.5% because that's all we can afford. I mean, I just throw that out for discussion. Thinking about it. I mean, we raise taxes up to 2.5%. All of our expenses don't go up 2.5%. We know that. Some are contractually way higher than that. Some are lower. Some are even. Some are cut back. We just, blended. Who knows? So I would throw that out. I mean, looking at, 4.6 is the number. If we can be somewhere between 0 and 2.5%, I don't know. I just throw that out as a starting point for discussion.
Can I answer?
What's our claim experience?
Mike's turning
right
red, I
now?
don't know.
Are we closer to the
You did.
0 based on our claim experience?
You're probably close to breaking even, so does that mean that you would have the average?
Mm-hmm. So if we're close to breaking even, let's go with 0. That's our goal. Right?
No, but I think if it was, Sue came back and said, "Look, I did the best I could. We're at 2.5%. Right around 2%." I think that's something we can live with, knowing that it's never going to be less than where we are now,
Well, listen,
and hurting the employees. Again, I'm not for hurting the employees. I never was. And I don't think
Yeah.
I could support that. But it has to be sensible too.
Listen, I can only say that after X amount of years at 9 and 10% increases. I mean, when I remember I was talking to Ed about it. When I was on FinCom, I started seeing those increases, and it just made me shake my head. And then we had a 4% increase last year, and I think it opened up a lot of people's eyes, and everyone kind of said, "Oh, well, great." 9-10% for the last 5 years of whatever it was, and now we're down to 4. That was great. If we can even get down to 3%, I think that's even better, isn't it? So we're going in the right direction there. Personally, I would rather save money, and go that route. But if we can't do it, we can't do it. I mean, we also have to be realistic.
Ed Dobie, 131 West Main Street, FinCom. The question that I have is based on a comment that Robin made, that the people that are involved in the insurance, in terms of the consumers of insurance, are risk adverse. Because we're going through a transition from when you never used to worry about insurance to having an insecurity about whether you're going to get coverage, whether you're going to get high deductibles. And it seems to me that everything that we're doing here is really just based on the buy-in that we get from the consumers of the product. That we can sit here and we can talk about this till the cows come home, but unless the population of users in the community, that is the employees, unless they do a buy-in on this, there's not much we can do about it.
Sure.
Can I respond
Sure.
to that? Keeping in mind that if the Board of Selectmen adopted sections 21 through 23 and used that as a negotiating tool, you can make changes. You do have to go through the bargaining process, but at the end of the day, you will be able to implement.
And with respect, I understand that,
Okay.
but you're dealing with the morale, you're dealing with everything else that goes along with the individuals that are consuming the product.
Correct, right,
And, you know, you don't know where that leads to.
yeah.
So, you know, I look at this gentleman here, I tend to agree. What we're looking at is we're looking at a process, not something that's gonna be implemented day one. I think we have to have an implementation plan. We have to have a timeline, if you will, for when we can implement it. We can have all the numbers and have the guidelines, but I still think, you know, we're gonna end up being captive to whatever the employees want.
Robin Olson, 113 Thurlow Street, FinCom. I think Ed brings up a great point, and I know this isn't part of your concern because you're going out there and finding the best plan for us, but I do think that's a consideration for all of the selectmen and for Mike, is that making sure that the people that are the consumers in this plan, the 186 or 200 people that you have, having them understand why you're doing this. You know, letting them be part of knowing what the goal is. What are they looking for in an insurance plan? What do they use the most? Having their buy-in into this process, knowing you're trying to save money for the town and maybe take that money and put it into infrastructures or put it back into the school or whatever it may be of value to you.
You know, I could chime in on that. Because I was present for some of these meetings, and
We had
how can I say this tactfully?
You remember it?
And I said, well, you know, the town's going to save a lot of money, and so aren't, you know, and you're not going to risk any coverage at all. And by the way, X% at the time was like 70% of your members in the union live in town. They're going to see, they're getting the benefit of it too. And it was, well, no, if the town's saving money, we should get additional. I'm like, but it's zero effect on you. That's a tough sell. I know people want to, you know, the unions want to protect themselves and the employees want to protect themselves, and I can't blame them for that. But sometimes it's a very hard sell. I will say that. You know, in the private sector, it's a little bit easier, but it just seems to me the municipality side, boy.
To David.
Well, you don't have the leverage with the
there was
union, but you
venom
might
coming
eliminate
at me,
that
like-
location.
Right. I was look. I'm pro. You know, I'm pro labor. I'm trying to do whatever I can, but
I think she had a very good point. There has to be a communication
Right.
with the union, because as a user of the insurance in this town, every time I go to the doctor or I have something done, I'm writing a check. You know, even though sometimes $15, sometimes $100, but you know, you're writing a check. And as you said, if you get these people on board, they're at, you know, and my first question every time I have something does come up is, am I covered for this and how much is it gonna cost me? That communications needs to be improved.
and you know what?
as to that.
Maybe
Right.
it's
The union is just as guilty of it
Right.
as we are.
Well, you know, when you compare it to GIC is one thing. Why don't you compare it to the real world?
Yeah.
In the private sector, co-pays at $500 a whack. You know, $40 for a specialist, $150, $25 to get your. $25 to get your routine blood done, on just for your annual checkup. For the blood test, there's a copay. I just got hit with that myself last week. I was like, what? How much? $25. I'm like, all right, I'll pay it, but I'm not happy. You know, MRIs at $150. You know, I mean, PET scan, CAT scans at $150. You know, day surgery is a $500 copay. Forget deductible. So I think you should maybe do a real world comparison too.
And again, I think the problem is in terms of the relationships with unions in general, where they look at a win-loss, they don't look at anything but the win-loss.
Yeah.
And they figure if you're winning something, they've got to be losing something.
Right.
And I think that's where the communication comes in. And I think, you know, that sooner or later the unions have got to be dragged kicking and screaming into the real world, because what you're saying is the real world.
Yeah.
Where my wife works, there are people that go in for colonoscopies, then they're presented with what they have to pay for it out of pocket, and they're choosing not to do it at the risk of their health. This is the real world of health now. It isn't, you know, we don't have this paternalistic type of an organization anymore that takes care of everything. There are cold hard facts. And the union, ultimately, if we continue to raise or have the rates risen for insurance, they're gonna lose members. That's all there is to it. We don't have any choice. But I do understand their feelings,
Yeah, oh yeah, me too.
but, you know, we have to do this in terms of due diligence, in terms of the numbers, but we've got to get through to the unions and explain what it is that's going on. And if we have to hit our heads against the wall 3 or 4 times, it's still got to be done.
Agreed.
Gary, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
When we made the plan change before, let me start with insurance is very sensitive to me. Ed's known me for a long time. I was a parent of what then was called $1 million child. Today it would probably be $100 million child. So having insurance is very sensitive to me. And we did make the change. The only way I agreed to it was we were going to take, I hope David can remember this, we were going to take a certain percentage of that. I think it was 35% if my memory is correct, and it generally is. And we were going to put it into, what was it, Mike, that we never fund?
Yeah.
The thing, the OPEC. We were going to put it into OPEC. We were going to take 35% because that way, to me, it felt like, because that's the protection for the employees that we're supposed to be doing as a town. And I said, the only way I'm going to buy into this is we take some of that money and we put it towards the employees. And by putting it into OPEC, we would have been putting it towards the employees. Fortunately, come finance time, I think this board voted unanimously to move it that way. But between the finance administrator and the finance board committee, it didn't get moved at town meeting floor that way. So as you're talking about being sensitive to employees, when we did do it before, we as a board did try to go down that road. But it was a tough finance year, and I understand, you can't always, but that was how we had planned that change. We were going to fund that OPEC with some of those savings.
Unfortunately, every year
now,
is a tough financial year.
And as to David, on your figure, you could put it out. We could have somebody come back, cut it by 10%. Okay? And next year, go up. That's what I remember hearing last year from Mike and whoever else came in here, because we had others in it. We went over this a lot last year, and they said you can get a real low ball figure that first year, and then the next year, and because you can't climb back the Maya. Right. So I doubt I'm going to ask a question, but I think I know the answer. Many other contracts we bid out for multiple years. Probably doesn't happen with insurance at all, correct?
You can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, too bad. I mean,
Division
to
of
me,
insurance
that would
doesn't
be
allow
the
it.
change. If we could say, we want a 3-year bid.
Yeah.
Give us a 3-year bid. That's what we want. Now, at the end of that 3 years, if they go up tremendously, you just jump back in with Maya, if they'll take you. But you can't do it. So, to me, I'm all for sticking with Maya. They've been, I think, fairly decent to us. We spent a long time once, Dave, thinking about going to GIC, and they were much more reasonable, and we didn't make that move. And a couple of years later, we were very grateful we didn't make that move because they had far higher increases, if I remember correct, than what Maya was giving
And
us.
thankfully, we had Sandy Garrity on FinCom at that point in time, who was still a municipal employee herself, had said, no way. She was adamant that we don't do it, and we went and looked at it, and we would have really got stuck.
Yeah.
The point in all this is it's the experienced rating, it's the claims that really, as a small group, could really hurt us.
Correct.
And participating with another 100 municipalities, to me, is probably, to Gary's point, is probably the best protection that we can probably have.
But we can still offer that third plan, too.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, if they'll allow
we're
it,
limiting risk. I mean, that's
Right.
what we're doing.
Right.
We're limiting risk.
We
We might not take advantage of the best thing out there today,
Right.
but we're
Long
limiting
term.
risk in terms of long-term stability.
And this is, we're paying for this, I asked Mike a question earlier, and somewhere the figures are in here, Mike, as to, because I was wondering, I know, someone retires, and you can retire in a town now in your early 50s, and we're paying that until they reach 65, at least our portion of it. And then when they do hit the Medicare, that's where your medics comes in, and what was that? That we're paying, I think it was $199 I think was on here somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
199.
so I mean, we're,
employee
as a
pays
town, you know,
133.
this is one of the benefits where the town, you know, as we get into something that we're on later, wage classification, and being told how poorly we're treating people, well, we're paying this insurance for the rest of their life. After they hit Medicare, we're still paying a portion of that medics. So, the cost to us is,
All right, so listen, we've had a very robust conversation. First of all, Sue, anything more to add?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we've had a very robust conversation here. We're an hour and a half in, so I think it's time that we decide, okay, on which way to go. I mean, I will say that it's always good to promote competition, okay, with a current provider. I don't think it's a good idea not to at least go out and kind of see whether we go that route or not. I still think we need to go out and kind of take a look at what is out there. I don't want, personally, I wouldn't want to have a negotiation with ourselves, right, with Maya. If Maya just knows, all right, listen, they're staying, all right, we gave them 4%, last year we'll give them 4.5% this year, they'll like that. I don't think we can kind of push ourselves in a corner that way. So with that being said, I still think we have to see what's out there. In the back of our minds, we could just say, listen, this is more of just the exercise, right? And kind of seeing what's out there.
Mike said, it's not locked in.
Can they refuse to not give us a bid, Maya?
Oh, Maya?
Yeah.
I've
If
never
they
seen
said-
that happen. I
If
don't
they
think
said,
that would
well,
happen.
if they're going out to bid, then see ya.
No, I don't, that wouldn't happen.
But Sue said we don't necessarily have to go out for bid, right? We could be,
I'm gonna get
informal.
quotes.
yeah.
We're not gonna issue a formal
Yeah, there you go.
RFP.
I like that.
Right, so if we don't have to issue an RFP, then
Right.
all we're doing is kind of,
Mike said, we don't have to.
long swimming, right?
Right.
So, sure, we'll take one last comment, Steve, and then we're gonna, kind of move.
Yeah, is there anything that we have,
Asked you tonight, that's out of scope of what you've contracted with the town. I haven't seen the contract, but.
I don't even remember what the contract says, but no.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
happy to do everything.
Okay,
He's
great.
doing everything.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I just want to make sure that if we're asking to do things, that it's within the scope of what she's,
Yeah.
we contracted her to do.
Can I just throw out one
Absolutely, sir.
other idea
Sure.
before you guys make your decision? The other option is to have me go to Maya and try and get you a certain % increase with them knowing if we don't get that,
Yeah.
then you're gonna go out to bid.
That's kinda what Dave was saying.
oh yeah, that's fine too.
Yeah, be the hammer.
As long as they know that we may be getting quotes and looking. What's wrong with going in with a good oak baseball bat?
Well,
Would it be
but
unrealistic
then
to
again,
ask
it
for a
goes to, what that number is.
It's not unrealistic to ask for a cut.
Dash.
I'm going back to Gary. I mean, it's unrealistic
That's
to
what
ask
I'm
for a
saying.
cut.
I mean, why?
Say -5 to
If
plus
you-
But that's the thing. If we
You're
go
not gonna
that
get
route,
-5 if you
can't.
get
You're just
Gary's
gonna get
point.
zero.
If you could
Low
go
cap
that,
is
You're gonna
Zero.
get zero.
Zero's the
yeah.
lowest you're
Alright.
gonna get.
So-
if you could go that third plan, you could possibly see that.
Well, an overall savings, but not in terms of premium cost.
No, not in terms of premium,
our
but,
overall
but in
savings,
our
right.
overall
Right,
cost, you
right,
could
right,
see it.
Right, exactly. No, I hear what you're saying, yeah.
I mean, if 20% jumped into that,
I mean, a worst case scenario, if everything stayed the same and plans, they said no.
and you're not hurting the employee, you're actually helping them
Right.
because you're giving them more options.
Right.
They've still got, if they want to keep what they've got, keep all their doctors, they've still got it.
So
They wanna
are
save
we in an environment that we can't actually save money anymore? Or we being any municipality, not just us? I mean, do they not do that anymore?
Meaning see a decrease?
Yes.
It's not gonna happen.
No.
That's
The
what I'm
only
saying.
way-
Is that
yeah,
just
unless
never
the
going to
only
happen?
way-
The only
plan
way it could
design.
happen, yes, is if
Only
you
way.
change the plan design.
Yep.
So if you add a deductible, you tweak the co-payments, or as you were saying, if you offer a third plan and everybody went into that third plan, that might be priced 10% below your existing plans. It's probably not gonna happen, but the
Design.
only way to see a decrease
I agree with
would be
Gary.
by changing the plan design.
Yeah.
I
So,
think that's
so
an
is that
easy way.
something that we have to agree upon here? I mean,
I think we have to give her direction, right?
that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah,
mean,
we
so
should
what do
definitely look
we?
at that stripped down plan, I'll call it that, but to Gary's, the
Yeah,
high
it's not
deductibles.
that
and
bad, it's, you
Maybe,
know.
you know, if you
It
push
is,
them
well,
for
there's
that.
two ways of doing it. It's as you said, one of them is the limited area, whatever you call it.
Limited network.
And sometimes they're higher deductibles. I don't know if they do one that's combined. I mean, that would probably be really stripped down.
Yeah.
But typically, they're about the same, but it's a more limited
Almost a
network.
catastrophic plan, in other words, it only covers.
And I thought we did look
major
to that
issue,
at one
major,
time,
you
didn't
know.
we?
Yeah, it would either.
They used to be around years and
Catastrophic.
years ago, they had like a
But
catastrophic.
hold on. So
We
before
did
we
limit
have Sue going and doing hours of work here, we also have to take into effect what some of our FinCom members said is that something that we should actually go to the people who are using the insurance first to get their buy-in on something like that? Do we kind of propose that and say, listen, we're thinking of doing this year?
I don't think you
Okay.
have to, Joe.
No?
Because, no, all you're gonna do is give them another option, like Gary says, we'll leave things the same and add it, and see if we can get a stripped down plan and let them make the decision. There's no bargaining, there's no nothing. It's just an additional
You still
fourth
may
plan.
have to, but.
Well, I was gonna say. I mean, I think there's some merit to making sure that we have our employees maybe voice whether a concern, buy-in, whatever it may be before again that we do a whole hell of a lot of work here. And,
I think it's almost easier if we can go to the employees with the information.
With the
saying,
information
these
first,
are your
okay.
rates.
I mean,
we can offer you
afterwards.
this plan,
Okay.
and it's going to be
Right.
this much of a reduction. So you would save X number of dollars. These are the benefits. I do think it's easy. I absolutely agree with everybody in the room that you have to educate the employees. You have to get their buy-in. But I think it's easier to have the information first and give them the full picture.
all right. So with that being said, when Mike, what is the cutoff? I mean, when would the town need to make a decision on which way we're going? I.e., do we have time for Sue to go do what she has to do, and then have her come back with numbers and programs and the like, and then have time to go to the employees and talk to them about this?
Yes, we do.
Okay, what is that date? Because I want Sue to hear this too, because we have to give her enough information
Well,
here
Sue-
so that
If Sue puts the requests for proposals out tomorrow or sometime this week,
which we're not doing though.
well,
Why not?
We're not doing RFPs. I thought.
no.
Well, it's still sending the information out
Okay,
and getting
all right.
quotes. It's just more informally.
I mean, with a short turnaround, how long, Sue? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
3 at the least.
Yeah, 3
So
weeks.
let's call it a
So
month.
we'll have all the information back by the end of February.
Okay, and that's right. So when then do we have to make a decision? What was our cutoff? date?
Well-
I forgot what that was last year.
Um,
Because it wasn't there like a 2 month.
well, we have to
Why?
include it in the bid, so our budget, so we need the numbers solidified 2 weeks before the town meeting at the drop dead date.
Right, but can I just
Yeah.
stick my 2 cents in
Sure.
here? We don't have to go to the employees if we're just adding another option.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I think.
If you're gonna add an additional plan, you're not taking anything away.
Yeah.
But adding an additional plan, you have to get the employee's permission to add
Yeah.
an additional plan?
Yes, we're changing the plan design.
But you can, but you know.
Well,
No, we're not.
I think if you kept the same plan design on the 2 existing plans,
Right.
but added a third plan,
Right.
I do think most municipal attorneys would say you still have to do, I don't know if it's impact bargaining or there's another type of bargaining, which basically notifying them of your intention to add another plan, and if they want to discuss it,
Okay.
they can come back and discuss it. It should be
Fairly
simpler than if you're
Right.
actually changing
Right, we're not
the benefit
changing the
design of
plan
the
design.
existing plan.
But David, this isn't. I don't think this is a. Do we have to more than should we?
No, I'm
I mean,
just
should
saying,
we
right.
add some
No, no,
value
right.
here in educating our? Because when's the last time we've actually sat down with our, our employees, or their representatives to kind of give them, the lay of the land and what
Years
we're
ago,
thinking.
was it?
14.
So, you know,
No, no, I
2020.
know,
so-
but I was just trying to say is we're not bargaining anything really. We're not changing the plan design of what we have. We're just adding another plan to notify
No,
them.
agreed.
That's our
I just want to make sure that,
Yeah.
from the timing perspective, that there's no negotiation here. It's just a matter of saying we're adding additional.
Either
plan.
way, we have enough time.
We have enough time.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
That's all. That's all I was trying to make.
Okay. All right. So what do we do at this point? What are we voting on?
No, just tell Sue to go get some quotes.
All right, so we'll get some quotes.
So, just to be clear, you have decided to go that route as opposed to having me go to Maya and say, if I can get X percent and the addition of a plan, that you won't get quotes.
I'd like this.
Those are the two different ways that we can
Yeah,
approach this.
I like that idea. To see what they say.
Well, just to let them know that we're thinking of getting
I've
quotes.
still got that fear that you get that low ball, but I mean, I think we'd know that too.
Well, listen, I mean, it sounds like a vote to me. Do we want to put that to a vote on how we want this to happen?
I would
What
not
is the
make
I would
percentage that
propose
we
what-
wanted
what-
to?
Yeah, well, that's what I think,
sorry.
Steve. So therefore, we have to come up with that price point that, you know, we're gonna be comfortable with. Once we come up with that, we can give Sue that, you know, information, and you know, then at that point, right? So if they can't get there, you know, then you can go out and kind of see what's out there.
Okay, there's a motion. I'll make a motion that we direct Sue, and what's the name of the company?
Cook and Company.
Cook and Company to negotiate on our behalf with Maya, to notify them that we're looking for a renewal and the rate to not increase, not to exceed, from a range of 0 to 2.5%. If they can't match that, then we will be considering RFPs.
Do you want to throw in a third plan?
Do you want to do
And-
two?
Oh, well,
After
that's
third.
the plan, right.
Because if you say two, they're gonna do two, right? Do we
So
want to say
I heard him-
zero?
I heard him say.
0 to 2.5%.
I got it covered.
0 to 2.5%.
And I heard him say with the third plan, I'll
With the
second
third
it.
plan, yeah.
With the third
Oh,
plan.
good,
Okay.
seconded, yeah.
Okay. We have a second, Doug?
No, Gary.
Gary seconded? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Mr.
You got it,
Chairman,
Janet?
No.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say this. I'd like to congratulate you on bringing Sue in. I think this has been
And Mike.
and Mike,
Yep.
a tremendous amount of information for us, and I think it's the clearest I've ever been, and I won't speak for the rest of the board, I'm with Gary now, I'll speak for Gary. For the last 9 years, you know, this is the clearest we've ever been on this, and so I think you've done a fantastic job, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Agreed.
Any further discussion on the table? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's the way we're rolling.
Nice to meet you all.
Sue, thank you so much for coming and taking some time. We really appreciate it.
All right.
It kind of made mud clear.
And good luck.
Having the purchase my own, I
Thank you.
have a
You'll be hearing from me soon.
decent
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't ever want to get to that thing where I have social security and have to figure out.
No, this is before social
B
security.
plan, A
voted for it.
plan,
I haven't-
plans, this
Yeah.
plan, forget it. It's gonna be ridiculous.
You ought to try dealing with the state on it.
I can imagine. Well, that whole health connector.
Because you have a third party, so you play the state, then they say, yeah.
And then if we can
Good night, everybody. Good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you.
Insurance, 10, 12%.
It's really ridiculous. So listen, everybody. We had that was a long, conversation. Do we want to take any break?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
I have to leave.
You have to take off.
Yeah.
Okay. What motion? Do we need a motion for that?
No, just call a recess.
All right. So we're gonna call a recess. 5 minutes. Okay. All right, thank you for everybody's patience while we took a little break. We are back, and we do have another topic that we'd like to discuss that is quite important to the town. And once again, we do have our members of the Finance Advisory Board that are still in the audience. For those who may or may not have seen our last meeting, a couple of weeks ago, we started discussing wage and classification in town. Our town administrator did talk to the state's efforts, to put something in place, for towns to follow. Mike did have some thoughts around it. He did supply us some numbers, around how he would like to move forward, with that. But there was certainly a lot of discussion on this board, some disagreement. So what I had asked was for folks to go home and kind of review these numbers, and how Mike, got to the numbers, and his methodology, around how he wants to put this wage and classification in place. With that being said, hopefully the board has thought long and hard about it, and has reviewed, the information that was, available to them. And once again, we're going to have a conversation about that tonight, to see if we can come up with an agreement, between us on how we're going to move forward with this wage and classification. So with that being said, does anybody have any initial thoughts on, how we're looking at this? Did anybody take a look?
Well, what was your question?
Any initial thoughts on, on what we saw from the classification?
Well, I wasn't here last week, but I did watch it.
Yep.
And I still am of the opinion that there's a lot of questions that arise from this. I don't know, I'm not clear in my own mind whether this is being proposed because of the new legislation, Mike, that was more towards compensation equality amongst the genders. Is that what prompted this wage classification study?
Well, what prompted the wage classification study was back in 2010, the town hasn't had a wage and classification system since 2003, and we need one.
Right, but
we should have one. So I did one in 2010. I updated it in 2017, and at the same time, the equal pay for equal work law went into effect. Well, actually, it's going into effect July 1 in Massachusetts, but they announced it last August. So that's why I brought it back in August. It achieves two things. You can't make you have internal equality and you have external equality. The study uses 13 equal towns to give us a base rate for where everybody else in our town should be. And then you have to also look at the internal equality. I mean, you can't be paying men more than women for doing the same job, or vice versa. But you also have to look at numerically. See, it can be a very, you have to look at it objectively. You can't look at the people in the job, you have to look at the job. and you can measure what a highway equipment operator does and compare it to what an administrative assistant does. And based on the job factors that you use, it may be that they should be paid the same, well, regardless of whether they're men and women. Even more so, you don't just underpay a secretary as opposed to a highway laborer, or even a firefighter or a policeman. So we can still get sued for not paying people. The Attorney General was, back in August, was supposed to give guidance for the cities and towns that if they did a study of quality, then that, because, and in our case, there's no doubt that to get everybody up to par, it may not work to do it in, it may be too expensive to do in 1 year. So if somebody sues us, according to the law, the town has a 3-year window to get up to speed. That it's just the fact that I mentioned last meeting was that the Attorney General hasn't provided any guidance to the towns.
Right.
And we're not sure if and when that's going to happen. It may be they're just going to wait for the lawsuits to happen and then base it on case law. That's not a very good way to do it. But regardless, we haven't had, it's been 14 years since the town has had a wage and classification system.
All right, Mike, with that said, hold on one second, guys. With that said, I still have not heard one thing in the 2 meetings that gives me the reasoning why this is a male-female thing, rather than just a talent level, whether it's a time in a position situation. What makes this a man-woman thing? I don't understand that.
Well, because it's the entire country pays women less than men for the same job. It's a well-known fact that women get 80% of or less than what a male gets.
But that doesn't mean it happens in our town or, Ipswich or Rowley or any other. I mean, you are generalizing, when, the state says that, they are generalizing. It doesn't mean it's happening here.
We don't know it's not happening
We
here.
also-
Unless you
we also
adopt
don't-
this plan, you don't know. I can tell you that this plan would take away most of that. I mean, anybody can sue for any reason, but I'm pretty sure, because I've done these plans in multiple towns all over New England.
All right.
Not all over New England,
So
all over
I-
Massachusetts.
So I will say that, in my opinion, and then, we'll talk, about some other things, but this should be about merit, okay? It shouldn't be about male, female, black, white, orange, green, whatever. Shouldn't be about anything more than merit, okay? What someone deserves to get paid, how long they have been at the job, how much of their life they've given to the job, because as we have mentioned in the prior meeting, it makes no sense to me how someone who is making $10 an hour, that has been with the town for 10 years, should be making the same as someone who's coming into the job from another town, okay, and should be, making the same amount of money. That makes no sense to me.
No, and that's not what this is gonna do. But you gotta start somewhere. You gotta get the right
We should.
pay levels first.
And I think that's what we have to.
In a band, and then you put them in that band, but you have to have the right pay levels first. And we've got way down on the minutia, which is, if everybody read the report, it talks to all of that. That's what it's all about. But you have to pick a number and put it down on a piece of paper, and then you assign people in that band.
All right. Well, anyway, go ahead.
So, is it in here about what towns we're clumped in with?
Yes.
Well, I didn't see them, so where is it in here? I have this blue packet.
Yeah, well, I was gonna try to simplify things. I mean, it's my job to pick which towns and design the plan. It's your job to approve the plan and fund it. So.
What if we don't?
Well, what if we don't agree with the towns?
Too bad. No, because these are the best towns. I mean, you can't go nitpicking them, because, it's just, you gotta use your best judgment. I have to use my best judgment. I've done this many more times than any of you. So I unfortunately, I'm the expert, and
I don't know if it's unfortunate, Mike, but maybe unfortunate for you.
well, it's unfortunate for me, yeah.
So are we certain that all the town employees that would be affected by this, that their jobs are properly classified?
I'm satisfied that they are, yes.
And then what do we do? Because I do know at least one case where we have an elected official that also is working in another job within the community, within the town. How do you handle those?
You look at the individual jobs. You don't look at the individual person. You're talking, they have two jobs. They get paid as a elected official, and then they get paid as an administrative
There's no issue
assistant.
with being an elected official and then working in another job that would change some type of classification.
They'd be in two different
separate,
classifications, two different pay grades, which they are now.
And then where did the where do you get the dollar numbers that you're inserting in there? Is it just town A pays this, town B pays this, town C pays this?
Yeah,
Or is there some guidance from the state that says you have to pay?
The state has nothing to do with it. There's 13 towns. Not all the towns have the same positions, but if you have 6 or more data points, that's pretty valid. Most of these positions in the survey have 9 to 12 data points, so it's a good. If you only have 1 or 2 data points, you know, then you go to comparing against similar jobs that you have good data points for. And each job is classified, is scored by at least 10 job factors. So a job could be, like I said before, a highway equipment operator could be, based on those 10 factors, have a score of 770 points. And a administrative assistant could have 770 points. But they're weighted differently. You weight them, I mean, the highway employee gets extra points because they're working out in, you know, in all sorts of weather, and the administrative assistant is nice and high and dry and warm inside. So you give, you know, the highway guy gets, or girl, gets higher points for that. But they need, and a highway person may need certifications on certain equipment. And they get, but then the administrative assistant needs to know software. You need to know, you know, which the highway guy doesn't need to know. So the administrative assistant gets more points than the highway guy. And I mean, we've established minimum requirements for the job. An administrative assistant might need more than high school level education. A highway guy probably needs a GED. I can tell you that's what they need.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the education level are different, so you score the job differently. You look at what the other towns are paying, and you also look at the job rating scores. And if they're not, if one's way out of sync, because in this case, the administrative assistant's usually a woman, and the burly guy out on the truck is a guy, so he automatically should be paid more because he's lifting heavy things. Well, he doesn't have to use his.
Don't say that, Mike. Don't go there.
Don't, please don't.
I caught myself.
Please don't.
Don't go there. I caught myself. He doesn't have to use his educational skills as much as the administrative assistant.
Yeah, no, we hear. Doug, do you have any questions? I know Steve has some questions.
Well, I'll defer to Steve and reserve comment later.
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
So, I don't know what the consensus of the board is, but we've had quite a few discussions about this now, and it's starting, for me, it's starting to feel like the insurance discussion, right? There's a lot of stuff to know. There's no knock to you, Mike, but there's, you know, I'm not an expert on this. I will come out and say that, but we need to know Fair Standards Labor Act, American Disabilities Act, Equal Employment Opportunity laws, right? Other state, other federal laws, other towns, and
That's what you pay me for.
Before I get
You
into,
don't need to know that.
before I get into the details,
Nice to know.
I think what the board has had an issue with is just the process, right? How we're configuring this, how we're determining it, and I know that Dave provided. He indicated that he's been doing this for the last 8 years or so for his business. He provided a pretty comprehensive classification study that when you look at other towns, that seems to be what they're doing as well. So it looks like that you could either do it in-house, right? Or there are companies out there, consulting companies, right? I looked at Amherst, Shirley, Arlington, Plymouth, Needham, Canton. They all use this company, Human Resource Services. And they all don't use the median pay in their analysis, and that's what you were using. So that's where I think, for me, I question if that's the right way to do it. But getting back to, this sounds like the discussion that we've had with insurance. There's a lot of stuff that we need to figure out. And I don't think that we can expect one person with all the other responsibilities that you have to focus on this one thing. That's why other towns go out to these consultants and have it done. I think what they do provide, and I'm not saying that the town should go out and hire this consultant, but they provide you a classification annual that the town could update, in future years. So it isn't just a spreadsheet, right, that says here's the median, we need to catch up somebody, for this particular year. It's a complex process to get there, and I just think that with all that you got going on your plate, I don't know how we can expect you to know about all this stuff. And to be able to provide us with a comprehensive plan like the one that Dave provided us.
Dave just took mine and expanded it. I'm glad you like HRS because they did this study.
I'm not saying I like them.
They did the study. I didn't have to do the study. I'm a colleague of theirs. I have done these studies. It's not beyond my... I did this in 2010. I spent 6 months when I was here doing it. All I had to do is update it with the new survey data, which they provided for me.
But the big contention, I think, was how you go through the calculations. And if we look at the way that other towns have done it,
I did it the same way they did it.
That's not what we're saying. I guess that's where we're having I think an issue as a board, is that the way that you're calculating it isn't consistent with what we see in other towns. Isn't that the...
Well, I used to charge towns $15,000 to do what I gave you. If it's just because you didn't pay for it, you can pay me the 15, 20 grand.
No, so, I mean...
That's what you
we
get.
We were using the median pay was what we talked about during the last...
If you look on there, there's 50 percentile, 75th percentile, and 90th percentile. You can use any of those you want. But this town could barely afford the 50th percentile pay. They're certainly not going to pay the 90th percentile and be one of the highest paid towns. All I'm trying to do is get us from being the lowest paid town. And I think the employees here would like that too.
Everybody wants a raise.
Yeah.
But Mike,
I'm just questioning the entire... Sorry, Mr.
No, it's
Chair.
okay, go ahead.
I'm just questioning the entire process. So we heard during the last meeting that we got these numbers from a friend who works in some other town. So that right there threw a big red
I
flag.
didn't say for another town, I said for another agent, a consultant.
Another agency. or whatever.
HRS, the one that you
Yeah.
identified
throws up
as
a big-
being used by all these other towns.
But that throws up a big red flag for me that that we're kind of slapping this thing together, right? We're getting info from somebody that we shouldn't.
All they did was the survey.
Right.
That,
Well, the
that's
survey.
that's the hardest.
You can get
that's
that
the-
on the MMA website. There's 100 and something towns that do the survey, and that's open to
you don't
to municipal
know that
employees.
you're comparing apples to apples. It's this. You're comparing apples to apples. They went through the process to double check that and our data was used in this study. Of these, we were one of the 13 towns.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go back to my comment that I think it's a whole lot of information. It's extremely complex. We saw it with the insurance. And again, it's nothing against you, Mike, or your skill set. It's just, it's a very detailed analysis to do.
It
And I
is
think
my
you have
it
to
is
be-
my skill set. That's what I came with from the town. I did this for 5 years in multiple communities in Massachusetts, and it's what I did, and you don't need to know how the nuts and bolts are. You
Well, who did the one in July? I thought that was from David. At least he told me that he did that one.
he did one page of
July.
this, 1 page.
Okay.
He took my page of the bands of the classes and re-identified them. But all the data that goes into that was done by the wage surveys were done by HRS. The job classification study, where I sat down with every employee and went over their job and wrote it down. And then using the same manual that these other agencies use, consultants, score the job. It does get to be a little bit subjective, but once you've done this multiple times, you know, the subjectivity goes away and you become, you're able to be more objective about it. I think you're just hung up on some words and the huge number that this 14 years of neglect has created. Now, I'm not saying, although I can show you how to, you know, that we could make the adjustment in 1 year and just pull the Band-Aid off and
Yeah,
do it.
we'll get to that, Mike, in a little bit. So, Gary, why don't you take the floor and give us your thoughts?
Well, you spent a lot of time. I want to thank you for it, but I got to disagree with 14. Your last statement, 14 years of neglect. I mean, I've been here for some time. Let me focus on. I got some individuals. Well, I won't say individuals, but individual jobs that we've gone over in the last few years. Okay, but you know, when we first brought this up, I forget how many months ago now, and we went around a lot about, and one of the things I thought we kind of went away with when Mike first brought this to us was the fact that, okay, yes, perhaps we are paying less than some other towns, but we were told at that time that we don't, well, maybe not told by Mike, but that we don't necessarily, we're not in competition with the other towns. Yes, we want people to be well paid. But we also have to take into benefit the package, the whole package. which all I'm seeing on this is hourly rates. And one of the benefits that, you know, recently we brought some people into town. I want to say, I think, good people. Some, I think, even took a pay cut to come here, I was told. But they came here because they had the benefit of a 3-day weekend. So we've got to remember that. We've got to remember that I don't think we're seeing a big turnaround here in this town hall. I mean, I've been here now, I'm going in my 9th year. I mostly see the same faces. So that it's not like a new person behind the window every 2 years. So I'm not seeing that. So I think people basically have to be fairly happy because they're staying. Okay, so if we want to take that into effect. Now, let's go with some of the things. Now, we recently hired a fire chief. Okay, this is where I'm going. I think these things can be handpicked, yeah? I mean, now, Mike, you worked with us through hiring him. Okay, you worked with us. You've got him down at 50% below. We were never told that. Yes, we knew we were on the lower side of surrounding communities, but you know, as an elected official, I also have to do my best to try to negotiate the best package for the town, also for the taxpayers. And we brought an individual here from another state. We had a lot of people apply for the job, and we negotiated a package. And now you're telling us, and you told us last week, focus on this one page. Now you're telling us give them a 50% increase, okay? And also, I think you're a little bit in conflict because you've done this and you're telling us to give you an 11% increase. And I personally think that's a little bit of a conflict. We recently brought in a treasurer collector. I think one of the people that was happy to come here because of the 3-day weekend, if I remember being told when we went through that. And I think we were told we're lucky to get her. She'd come in here, perhaps taking a pay cut. 3.1% over what we should be paying. Okay? We recently, one of the things I have seen the turnaround in is building commissioners, okay? But I don't think that's because of the pay. That's because of personal reasons. One guy was very, last one, didn't really love the job here, I was told, but got a job closer to home, had a, you know, can understand it. Okay? Guy comes from Haverhill. I think he's fairly happy here. You know, he knew what the pay was coming in. Now we want to give him a 14.7% increase. When the guy's a new employee, came here, wanted to come to work here. So I don't understand some of these figures. You know, as an elected official, we also have the taxpayers now. And you said, you've got the answers, just focus on this one page. I'm focusing on it. And you've got the money to pay it, $174,000, $296.82. Is that coming out of your pocket? You said last week you've got the money.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
Yeah.
the money's in the
We're
budget.
getting into that
Okay,
in a little bit, okay?
I think I've said enough, but again,
Yep.
people, we're not seeing a big turnaround. Should we be looking at this? Yes. But I don't think that, I stated it last week, I think we need to take all contractual labor off of here, elected officials. I'm not saying we can't look at them at some point. But, you know, we've also done our job already, and now to be told that, you know, I really take the fire chief one as an insult. I really do, because we were led through that with Mike, and we did the best we could. I think we got a good man, and I thought he was coming here fairly happy with what he was making. And now this thing says, give him a 50% increase. I don't think that's fair to the taxpayers.
Okay, so we've heard from most of the board. I have a couple other comments, but I'd like to hear from our finance and advisory folks. So I know, Robin, you had your hand up, so why don't you lead us off?
All right, I have a couple of questions. Robin
Yeah,
Olson,
yeah, that's a good idea. You can like come up, you know. You don't have to.
Closer? All right, hi.
Come on closer.
Hi, Robin Olson, 113 Thurlow Street, Finance Committee. Stop me, Ed, if I say anything I'm not supposed to. So, first off, I want to say I appreciate you undertaking this. In my role as a human resources professional, I do see the need to have wage surveys done and to ensure that we have pay equity across our positions. So I admire you for undertaking that. But I heard you say two different things, and I have some questions. You said that the data, this is what you used to do, that the data came from 13 different communities, and each town had at least 6 comparison points, but many had 9. What positions does the survey cover? In general, just general groups.
Every one,
Mainly administrative, or?
every one that you find in the town hall and beyond, but that's
The list. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Perfect. So that leads into my next question. You mentioned in there, you said two things, that you did talk about the law, and I know that was initially a concern that you guys had asked about. There's been fair pay, the Lilly Ledbetter Pay Act put into play, and it is about equal pay for equal work. That being said, and it is good to have a structure, and many companies take the approach of a wide base band with the different percentiles in place. You mentioned aiming for the 50th percentile band, and I was wondering why, and again, I haven't seen the numbers, but I'm wondering why you chose to take everyone to 50th, maybe instead of starting off taking everyone to 25th percentile, because as long as you keep it equitable amongst all the different individuals on your team, or in your group, you're within compliance of the law. So I wanted to know why you took it to 50th instead of 25th.
I didn't have data for 25.
You didn't have data for 25, okay. When you did the wage and classification study, did you take into account, I heard you guys mention that we have a 3-day work week here?
No, 3-day weekend.
3-day weekend.
Four-day
3-day weekend. 3-day weekend, okay. So sorry. It's a little late and I've been going since early. Was that did you reduce the pay of all of the municipalities across the board to take that into account, that it was a shorter work week? It wasn't 2,000.
Did
Mike.
it by hour.
Hey, Mike, hold on one second. Selectman Surface is now on the phone, just so everybody knows, because he did have to leave, but he would like to participate, at least for the time that he can, okay?
Do I need to go back?
No.
No, go ahead. No,
Okay.
go right ahead.
So
Everything was reduced to hourly wage.
to hourly wage, okay. So would you take into consideration maybe looking at it from a 25th percentile? I'm looking at my questions. The 25th percentile rather than looking at a 50th percentile pay?
Well, would have to redo the survey.
Okay.
I've never used 25.
Well, just being out in the market, and again, I don't deal with municipalities, I deal mainly with public and private companies, that is a consideration to take into place when you have such a deficit. I think you guys said it was $175,000 a year. Is that correct? You might take a different approach to step it up in that regard.
Well, I've suggested we do it in over a 3-year period.
Okay. Did you take total compensation of the different municipalities into effect? Because I just heard about insurance plans that you guys just talked about.
No, benefits were not is part of the survey.
But might that be something to consider?
In a broader study, yeah.
Well, Mike, if I can intercede there, what does the state call for? Is this the whole purpose of this? Is because the state is calling for towns to do this? Is the state calling on just looking at compensation or compensation plus benefits?
There's no guidance from the state.
Okay. All right.
No, there's a lot of acts, just like I mentioned, the Fair
Labor Standards
Labor
Act.
Standard, the American Disability Equal Employment, and there's other state or federal, who knows what.
And I did do FSLA certification of each position.
So you did do exempt, non-exempt,
Yes.
salary exempt. Okay, so that's basically whether you get overtime or not. So just a crash course. Anytime you want, you can come hang out with me at work. Okay, are the job factors that you used in the study, are those set externally by the state, or were those the ones that you determined upon?
I didn't determine upon them. And once again, the state has nothing to do with it. It's best practices.
So okay, because that was where I was getting confused a bit. So I would say, with my colleagues, if they would agree, I agree that this needs to happen and that this is a best practice to put in place wage bands. And you'd see that many companies use very broad wage bands, and I think Mr. Surface might speak to that. I think I've heard him talk before. but that maybe you're not as aggressive on the 50th percentile, because everything I've heard tonight makes me want to be an employee of Georgetown. You got an HMO plan, you have a 3-day weekend, and it sounds pretty great. So I think you might want to consider shifting that plan. That's my opinion. Thanks.
Point of order. Can perhaps David call in on that number, and then we could all hear him better?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
All right, so the reason why I was concerned about bringing everybody to the median is because I think there has to be criteria based on each individual person, and that analysis needs to be done. I was looking at some of the stuff. Like when all those steps, the median step was this in the middle. Then we had a high and we had a low. Didn't we on all those steps?
No, the median was not in the middle.
Where was the median?
It was all over. There was no. I just used the median of the survey when putting them on the grid or the in the classification band. They were done primarily. In the back of your head, and I do have the length of service now attached to the individual positions.
Right. See, in all of this, what I think needs to happen is before we say we're going to bring everybody up to median, the majority of our employees are below median, but there are some that are above. All right, you want me to call the landline, Joe? I will.
Yeah, just because we'll probably be able to hear you a little better, David.
I'll call back in 2 seconds.
Yep, thank you.
Does he have the number?
Yep, I just texted it to him.
Thank you.
Ed, while we're waiting, I know Wayne left. Did he have any questions? I know his
No,
all right.
I get from our conversations back here, we believe that the direction is correct conceptually. We feel that you seem to be getting hung up on the numbers for specific jobs as opposed to implementing the concept is correct. I don't see why we have to immediately give raises. I think that if you can feather these in over time, but I don't feel any compunction to go up with, as Gary said, what was it, 40% for the fire chief? 50% for the fire chief? He came here for the salary that he agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you talk about the 3-day weekend. If you were to try to get a job in Florida, do you think you'd get paid the same that you do up here? No, because it's called the sunshine tax. Because of the quality of life down there, they pay you less. In effect, that's happening here in town. The quality of working here is such that it's an attractive place to come. So I don't necessarily feel that we have to go and spend an additional $175,000, but I do think, and I do agree, that we have to embark on the trip that Mike wants us to go on, and that is putting this thing together. Are we talking about equality of pay in terms of the sexes, genders, whatever, or are we talking about giving general increases across the board to every employee category?
Both.
Yes.
See, I think conceptually you guys are right on target with meeting the band so that you insulate yourself from a lawsuit. If I was going to look at this, if I was in your position, I would start off looking at where those disparities of pay are. I've done that in my own organization. Where's the disparity in pay? Those are where you start to make your adjustments. Then you move up and you pick people over time. You don't blanket across and take a $175,000 hit in year one and so on and so forth. That's what's concerning to me. I think Mike has done his due diligence on the survey. I don't see this jump.
Yeah, I think we've done some of that with some of our recent hires. We have realized that, so.
People don't just sign up for the money, they sign up for the package. I would also tell you that it's much more, pay is important, but feeling valued and respected and having balance is just as important in the workplace. And it seems like you got a lot of good stuff.
And people aren't trapped here. They can leave. They can go somewhere else.
Agreed.
No, and the numbers show that people stay.
Right.
There have more people that have been here 10 years or more than have less than 10 years. A lot more. It's probably 75%. Let's say it's 50-50. I don't want to make outrageous claims. But the ones we have replaced recently, that's how we've been adjusting our pay. When
Right.
somebody leaves, the
You
new
pay more to
person,
replace them.
yeah,
Hello, David?
or a lesser experienced person
Hold on, David.
will get paid what the 10-year person was getting paid. So, now we're even creating more inequities. And the people who've been here the longest are getting screwed.
That happens in business anyway.
Well,
If you
it's not fair.
life isn't fair. You can, I've been in business for 40 years, and I've seen people that have left a company and come back and they actually get paid more than they did before. It happens.
Yeah.
I think
They come back as a consultant
or whatever
without
but
benefits,
but
so
what
they can
happens
get
is,
paid more.
I think that we agree with the concept. We agree that you should work on the inequities. We agree that you should work on equality, but we don't see this as being, let's raise this. I don't think that's the prudent way to go in the short term.
Yeah. David, welcome back. Why don't you continue on your thoughts?
Okay, so getting back to the median versus the maximum and probably an entry level, which is probably 25 percentile, then you have median, then you have maximum. And then there's distributions within that. What I think we have to do is decide as a group what level of experience and or time on the job, whether it's here or Georgetown, what number, is it 8 years of experience, is it 10 years of experience, is it 5 years of experience, do we expect people to be at the median? But I think you start from there. So, for instance, we may say that somebody that's been there for 10 years as a clerk is way underpaid because they're below the median. That may be true. But you also may have a case where somebody like, I just picked somebody, our building inspector, who has multiple years of experience, and he should be above the median based on years of experience. He probably should be in the 75 to 80 percentile. Same thing with Mike, same thing with the police chief, same thing with the fire chief. Again, just using those as examples of longevity. So I think you got to go and look at them that way and say, what's the adjustment for each individual person based on the criteria that you set for the midpoint. It starts there, and that's the median of all of the salary surveys of comparable communities, comparable position, and you look at it that way. And I say you would have to talk with that, sit down and talk with that employee and say, look, we realize, that we're not paying what Rowley's paying. We're not paying what you could probably make in, pick another community that's relative to us, that's part of the survey. However, over the next 3 years, we're going to try to do our very best, with a plan, maybe 3 or 4 years, depending upon how far the inequity is. We're going to bring you up, besides your normal, COLA increase, we're going to do a salary adjustment, and it's going to be done over the next 3 years. I think that's the way we should be approaching this, rather than pushing everybody to median. Now, if everybody is below median, which we have people that are above the median, they look at Mike's analysis, then I would say, all right, maybe we do a blanket over the next 2 years, we're going to try to get to median. And by the way, 2 years from now, median could be different than it is today, depending upon the demand in the type of industry we're in, which is public service. So, for me, I am not in favor of move everybody up to median. I think that's the easy way out. I think you got to look at, establish those goals. And I think, Mike should be able to come back to us and say, based on the median being 10 years of experience, I think or 8 years of experience. This is what each individual person should be adjusted, and this is the total amount. Now, that we may not like that amount, but maybe we should put an action plan together that says we're going to move those people up over a course of a number of years. It goes back to, and I know that Gary has said this in the past, they knew what the salary was when they took the job, and they seem to be happy. But I think that's how you really do an equitable salary distribution. Now, if there's any within each group, because Mike has them groups, which I like, I think that's the right way to approach it. For instance, the two chiefs and Mike are in one group. They're the highest group in the entire town. If there's inequities within the group, that also has to be addressed. It also has to be addressed upon, male, female too. So if you look at just the two chiefs and Mike, there's certainly a huge inequity there with the fire chief. They both have the same job rating. All three of them come up close in points, right, Mike?
Yes.
So if there's an inequity there, there's definitely one. And that one's definitely glaring inequity. There may be some amongst the clerks. Now, I think you have to look at, again, going back to the example, if you have a clerk that's just out of college, has maybe 1 year of experience, that person should not be making the median. The same as somebody that's been there 15 years. That person should probably be in the 25 percentile, if you can even attract them at that. Again, sometimes you do have market, pressures that would keep you from making, even getting somebody to fill the job. I realize that, but in a perfect world, that's how it should work. So over the next 5 or 6, 7, 8 years, whatever number we put on the median, that person would be moved to the median. Just like anybody that's been there 8 years, then they move to 15 years, they should be probably closer to the 75 percentile. That's how I see it. Again, this is going to be expensive, but it's about fair and equitable. I think for this budget pass, we at least we put all the numbers together, but I think what needs to be addressed immediately is any type of inequity amongst male, female, those type of huge inequities, people doing the same job. I'm not so sure that we've identified any of those. Have you, Mike?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so those, I think those should be addressed immediately, taken care of. I think that number should, that should be passed out from this and given to the Board of Selectmen and FinCom to put in the budget immediately. We need to address those right away. As far as people not making the market, like Ed said, hey, life is life. If you don't want to work here, then, if you feel you can make more money somewhere else doing the same job, then all the power to you. I think there's a point in time where we have to say that, or we work with our employees and say we are going to try to move you up. Just be patient over the next 3 years. This is what we're going to do for you. Some of this is contractual too, right, Mike? I mean, some of this is covered under the CBA, right?
No, these are all non-union.
So we can kind of, handle that in a different situation. So, to me, I would deal with the inequities first, then come up with that analysis. Let's establish what median should be in terms of years of service. And I got to defer that back to Mike's suggestion. If that's 5 years, 8 years, if it's 3 years, if it's 10 years, I think that's up to Mike to take a look at that and be fair with that and come back to us and give us the list of these are the adjustments that should be made based on people's, experience level. Not only just at Georgetown, but also in the same job somewhere else. Now, do we want to count those as full years of experience? Maybe not. Maybe we want to give people credit 1 year for every 2 that they've worked somewhere else. Reward people for working in Georgetown at 1 for 1. So that's my suggestion. I know I've been long-winded, but that's how I would see things and approach things.
I don't disagree with you one bit, David.
Okay.
Well, so with that being said, so we really have to figure out the formula then. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But Mike, you agree with with David, which is somewhat surprising to me because what David's saying is he disagrees with your study.
I didn't hear that.
Well,
No, I disagree with everybody everybody to median right away. I don't think that that's the 175,000 just by moving everybody to median is not the way to approach it. I think you got to look at each individual person and whether they need to get to median or they need to get to 75 percentile. I think that's what we have to do, and then come up with the list. Just going to median for everybody is not. I don't think is the way to go.
No, I agree.
But what is median? I mean, let's talk as a group. I know it's getting late, but is it 8 years of experience?
This is normal for us.
See, I think, David, you're looking at a different median than Mike. You're looking at a median here, and you're
We're just
associating it
using
with
different
words.
words.
Mike's associating his median with other towns, and I think that might be where I'm hearing a difference.
No, he's looking at the median salary of other towns, what other towns are paying for those positions.
Market rate.
So,
I'm looking at market.
Right. So the market rate, it could fluctuate. And I know there's an HR professional in the room. Market rate for Salisbury for a chief that's been on the job for 25 years could be a lot different than, could be skewed higher than our chief that's only been with us for 3 years. So it's all relative. I think you have to decide upon what you're going to use for the market analysis. So if it's the median income, the median pay of all these surrounding communities in the evaluation, in the survey, I think that's kind of the average. So that I think that could be the median that you start with, and maybe look for where the maximum is and the minimum is. Maybe we probably are the minimum, and then go from there.
No.
But you can pick any survey and any number that you want to make your argument in this. By the way, there's no real rocket science to this thing. There is some assumptions that you have to put in there. Do we want to be a town that pays above market for entry-level people? Do we want to be at the market? It all depends on what we want to be. And for me, I'd say, a minimum of 5 years to be at the median on the job in Georgetown. And then, maybe like a 5 to 8 year type of thing. I don't know, I'll defer that back to Mike. I mean, he knows what to fill those positions, what you really need for people with longevity.
Can David void for a minute that I can make a remark to what he just said about where we want to be?
Sure, David, hold on one sec. Go ahead, Gary.
I want to say, Mr. Chair, obviously, I did look this over, okay? As a matter of fact, I've looked it over every time we get it. So it's 3 times. I got notes on 3 separate pieces of paper. But I like to also answer to the taxpayers. And I think I'm sitting here, and I think the best way for me to say it right now is looking at this thing. Before I came here today, I trimmed my beard and I got a haircut because when we're discussing this, I am not going to act like Santa Claus, okay? I'm not wanting to spend and just freely give out $174,000, and I don't right now care whether you phase it over 3 years or 5 years. So, thank you. I'll try not to make any more statements about it tonight.
Sure. Can I just ask, or make a couple comments?
Sure.
Vin Milano, 7 Horsemen Circle. So Mike, when you were talking about how you did your study, I think I heard you say you interviewed each person to establish what their job responsibilities were.
That's right.
Do you validate that with anybody? Because
With their supervisor.
So you did?
Oh, yeah.
So any kind of embellishment got filtered out? Okay, good.
And they knew I was going to be checking with their supervisor, so ahead of time.
Okay. So the only other comment...
Very little embellishments.
I completely agree with Robin. Total compensation has to be the mark, right? You can't, because I don't know, do all communities have 3-day weekends, do the same insurance match?
No.
I mean, I used to work for a private employer that they used to give us total compensation at the end of the year. Social Security, bonuses, pensions, all of that rolled up. In some cases, it doubled your salary.
Yep.
And that's a mark. That's an important mark, and that's one of the reasons people stay with you. So I think total compensation has got to be the measure, not just salary.
Some part-time employees get full benefits.
I'd come be a clerk for full benefits.
Well, we're required by law to give full benefits by full-time employee is somebody who works 20 hours a week.
Oh,
that's a state law. That's a state law. So all
But that's
towns are in the same boat when it comes to something like
You
that.
try to find that in the state law. That may be a state mandate, what they tell us we should be doing, but you try to find that, okay?
Well, I've found it.
Well, I appreciate it very much if you show it to me.
Okay.
As David said, we do have an HR professional in the room. So I actually. All right, Mike. I'll give. My bad. You're right. Robert, I don't know if you can comment on how your company, kind of goes about doing this. I don't know if that's private.
I could tell you what I would do from my experience and what my recommendation would be for you. And
Sure.
I think Mike has taken in a very important, critical step.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have some bands for your salaries and for your positions, and you need to know what your positions do. You need to know if they're FLSA, if they're exempt or non-exempt, so that you're paying people overtime, which is kind of lost in all the, and I'm sure, hopefully this is covered, you guys have got this covered, but that's a bigger claim than what we're talking about in this room right now, is making sure that he's done by classifying these people, is making sure you've discerned between who earns overtime and who doesn't. Because that's a bigger liability in my opinion. But then I think much of the approach, and I think Mr. Surface talked about it on the phone, is maybe you say in year one, we're going to take total, well, let me step back. We're going to take total comp into play. And then we're just going to look for pay disparities. And I think and I'm telling you the playbook for how we've looked at this. We look for pay disparities. So is there a man or a woman with equal experience, equal knowledge, skills, and abilities, and are they being paid equitably within the business or within the town? We also look at it a couple of other ways. We also look at it based on ethnicity. That's where I'd hit this first if I were you guys. And I'm giving you the playbook for what we do. And then you go and you say, okay, where do I want to be in the market? What is my goal for my people? So what is your goal for the people that work for you in the town? Do you want them to stay 5 years? Do you want them to stay 10? Do you want to turn over certain positions more quickly? Then you say, okay, this is where for each position, you don't say every position across the board that you want it at the 50th percentile. You might say, okay, I want this at 75 because this is a really key. If we lost Mike, we're screwed. I want to keep these positions in my chiefs at 90, close 75th, 90th percentile. Other ones down here because you're okay turning it over. And that's my.
Yeah, I actually go back to something Ed said that I wholeheartedly agree with, and that is, and I think Gary alluded to it. We talk about medians in 25 percentile, 50%, whatever. If you have a position, okay, that the median, okay, is say 50,000, okay, isn't the market whatever that employee will accept? Okay, if they accept 25,000 for that job because they're in dire straits and they just need to earn some income, why is it incumbent upon the town to say no? We're not giving you. We're gonna give you 50,000. I know you'll take 25. We're gonna give you 50 because we just like you. That to me that makes no sense.
Well, that doesn't happen.
Mike, it can happen, and I'll tell you what has happened because it happened with the fire chief. The fire chief came to this town because he knew he's never a fire chief, and he wanted to get his feet wet, and he took the salary with the notion that after 3 years and his contract was done, now he had some experience and now he had something to negotiate with. It does happen.
The only thing, if I may interject, Mr. Bonavita, the only thing I would be concerned about is when you offer someone, the thing you have to stay away from, and I'm sure Mike with his experience has done this, if you have two people that come, and I'm going to pick administrative assistants.
Right.
And if you come and someone may be more desperate for that job, you have to think about if you have someone else in that job, that you're paying them equitably across the board. Now that wouldn't have happened with the fire chief, but if I have one admin that's making 45, and I have this other admin that's coming in desperate and looking for 35, I have to take into consideration what I'm paying that other person. I need to check myself and say, okay, am I within a band? What's the difference in experience? What's going on here? And then I have to be equitable. That's where this all.
So you could basically be at the bottom though of that band.
You could be at the bottom of the band, but I want to look at it and say, okay, do Robin and Joe? Okay, they both got their degrees. They both have 5 years of experience, you're going to want to make sure you're equitable on those, whatever factors you guys have decided are what you're going forward with. That's what you have to be concerned about.
Okay, fair.
And that's what I think this all goes back to the whole concept of what Mike has done is really good work. And you're getting it free.
No doubt.
So I agree with it, but I mean, when you talk about the pay acts that are going into place, your fire drill or what you need to be worried about right now is where you have those pay disparities.
No, and I absolutely agree. But again, as we work through these, I have to say that, again, I agree with Ed, I agree with Gary. And then to go back to what Gary said is that we are representing our taxpayers. And it doesn't seem right to me that we're going to pay someone more than they deserve. To Selectman Surface's point, we don't need to come in at the high end of a band or whatever. If we can conserve some money, for this town to put back into the budget. So, there's a ton here that we have to discuss. Sure, Ed.
You, however, and Mike has brought this up, you do have to look at where there's inequities, and you have to resolve that.
Sure.
Legally, we have to resolve that.
Sure. Oh, no doubt.
That's a priority.
Yep.
Because we don't want to open ourselves up to lawsuits.
No doubt. I completely
think at
agree.
our last meeting, we asked to hear that.
Yep, and that's going to be first on that agenda. I mean, we have to figure out, but even that, right? I mean, we don't know what the inequity is, and once we do find that out, how are we going to resolve it? Well, we're going to have to resolve it by still putting something in place, right, which will carry over to everything that we're talking about here. I can't say that we're going to make a policy just for these inequities and then put another policy in place for everything else. We still got to come up with a kind of a plan, and if we're going to address these inequities first, we're going to have to do it, pretty quickly.
It seems to me, Mr. Chairman, that we're all in agreement of the concept.
No doubt. I absolutely
And
agree.
I think the issue is not what we do, but how we do it. And I think that's where there's a lot of disagreement in terms of how much do we have to pay for this in terms of on an individual basis. And it does come down to how you look at it. If you want to look at it in complete fairness and you give everybody money, but if you want to do it, in a proper manner, you have to take bits and pieces of it and then rebuild it back again in terms of the bands, determining who gets what, and not just doing a broad brush approach to giving everybody money.
Yep. As we're getting pretty late, and I don't want to keep everybody. I think we're losing a member here who's getting pretty tired. I think that I'm going to take. Are there any other comments from the board? Doug, I know you've been writing a book here. Do you have any other comments? No.
No,
Gary,
I just want to make
Steve?
sure. Well, I guess.
No, I think we should, just like we did with insurance, I know it may not be a popular decision, but
I'm thinking,
I think we need it to be, the methodology to do this needs to be objective. And I don't think, not to anyone's fault, I don't think we have that objectivity. And if you're an employee, you're an employee, right? So you can't really be objective about it. And again, speaking to the future, we're talking about what's the strategy here and how we want to proceed forward. Whichever way we do it, either we have someone from outside or internal, I think there needs to be a plan for us to update this on a yearly basis or however frequent that we need to. But I'm in favor. I'm not sure what the board is.
So
I'm in favor of an outside consultant.
So what I'd like to throw out there
If
is,
I may?
Yeah, sure. Ed. Go ahead.
It seems to me that Mike is eminently qualified to do what needs to be done if he's given the proper direction from the board.
Mhm.
Don't forget, he's come at this, doing it in good faith the best way he thought he could at the time.
Yep.
To the point of paying a consultant, if Mike has already done the work, I don't see any point to paying for another consultant.
Yeah, I got to. I got to agree with that. You know, and again, Mike, I hope you don't think this is a bashing session. It really isn't. You know, as Robin said, you've done a lot of good work here. You've taken critical data and you've put it on paper so we can actually look at it and have a conversation, about it. So to Ed's point, I agree. I think Mike is more than qualified, to do this, in my opinion. I would like to suggest, though, in accordance with, FinCom, I don't know if you guys are up for it, but I think this really warrants kind of a roundtable. I really do. I think this is something that is important enough that, maybe we meet again, with FinCom.
We're ultimately going to have
as
to decide at
advisors.
some point anyway.
And we basically put something in place. I really do. I think there's enough discussion and there's enough different points. There's enough conversation here that if we get together as boards, that we can come together and put together a very equitable program, for the town. I do say that. And again, Mike, I do applaud you for everything you've done with this. It's been, I think it's really, it's been a really good job. And I do say it's something we have to put in place. And, if it's up to me, something will be put in place. We have to put something in place as a, program that we can kind of rely on so that we don't get back to where, we are now. We have 2 HR people in the room that both agree with that do this every day. And for the rest of us, again, we're going to have input around whatever we put in place. But at the end of the day, we have to have something, that we can kind of, lean on, moving forward. So did you have more?
I was just going to say, Mike
Hold on one second, Dave.
Mike has done all the foundation work. There's no sense, redoing this, replowing the same field. He's given us the basics where we can work from.
Yep.
The concept is in place. It's a sound concept. I think we all work together. I think we can come up with a good solution quickly.
I agree. David?
How about I make a suggestion that one person for the Board of Selectmen and one person from FinCom, me and Robin, since he's been very active tonight, why don't we possibly meet with Mike and have some sessions before we make any type of, bring any type of presentation to the Board of Selectmen? Because you have one person from FinCom, one person from Board of Selectmen, and work with Mike, kind of go over everything. Not that we want to get that much into the weeds, but maybe at least just do representation from both boards, working with Mike. He can show us what he has, and maybe we can make some suggestions that we think that the board, both boards could buy into. May make the process that much easier.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say to that, David, is, I guess we can look at.
Mike, if you feel like, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but on this particular, we may save a lot of time and energy.
No, I'm fine.
So you're saying just have a meeting with Mike and representatives of both boards.
Yeah, me, Robin, and Mike can get together in a room and kind of go over things and make some suggestions. Mike, from our perspective as the people that have to vote on something, and I think the process may go smoother.
I would like to suggest only because David, believe me, I trust both you and Robin. I don't know how. I'm not going to speak for Ed, but I'd actually like to be part of that. So if it's all right, I'd actually like to join. Ed, would you?
I'm open. I trust Robin implicitly. So
well, it's not like I said. It's not that I don't trust David. I think I'd like to be part.
I'm talking about her professional expertise versus mine.
And David has much more expertise than me. I just kind of want to.
I'm open.
Even if I listen in,
yes.
I don't care.
Yes, I'm open to it.
David, would you be okay with that? If I would like.
I meant the all will and pleasure, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I know, but again, because if there's anybody who is knowledgeable and has the experience, David, and believe me, I do recognize it's you. So, if there was one member, it would be you. I would absolutely agree with that. So, but with that being said, is that okay with the board? Can we can we allow just David and myself along with Robin and Ed just to have that initial discussion?
I like to be as open as we can, but sometimes in order to move forward, I do realize you have to do this. But I just want to point out, if you've got one place to start, it's what we've talked about here as a board. We want to make sure that we're not breaking the law. I mean, we're talking, I think, the two different things. We took what we started with. That was a state mandate, don't get yourself in trouble, don't get yourself in court. And we've taken it to a much broader thing, that not to say we don't need to be there, but let's keep the focus also on what we started with. And again,
I think we can do this in two levels, Gary. To be honest, one is the...
Yes, but what I'm saying is, remember, level one.
Then deal with how are we going to do this on a long-term basis.
Yes.
Let's see where we are today, actual versus market, see what criteria we're going to use, and then what that number could possibly look like.
Yes, I think
we're actually going to go out and make all those adjustments day one, but at least we know what we have in front of us in terms of our workforce.
That's what I'm hearing. Short term, we're not breaking the law, and the whole package is a more long-term.
Right. The second piece would be that I think identify the inequities, which Mike has already done, and then say, look, this is something we're going to look at over the long haul, but this looking at it position by position, experience level and median income and median price ranges and all that stuff, and come up with a plan that says this is what the number is. If and this is based on some criteria rather than moving everybody to median.
But
I think that's the second step of it.
If you remember my comments from last week, though, I mean, I really have a problem taking this away from anybody but hourly. I mean, we do our best as we can here to enter into contract with individuals, and we brought in a lot of hourlies recently, and as we brought them in, that's where we've been making the adjustments, just as Mike said. Well, I mean, not to say that we shouldn't be looking at these, but I think that these other things need to be looked at contractual time. We can have leadership in that, but I just have a real problem with changing any contracts midstream. And
all right, no, we're not, Gary, listen, I think we're just going to come up and say this is where we are, right? Legitimately, this is where we are based on a whole bunch of criteria so we don't get ourselves in trouble. And then we say, what are we going to do with it? If the decision is, if it's a fire chief, we're going to say, well, when we do his next contract, we'll take care of it then. We're not going to come up with an action plan on how to do it. I think it's, what to do with it after we get the results.
Okay.
We have to get the results right based on criteria so we don't get ourselves in trouble. Then we figure out how we're going to deal with it. I agree with you. There's no sense in us saying, listen, we got a huge, on the 3 contracted employees, meaning the 2 chiefs and Mike, then all of a sudden we're just going to walk in and give somebody a $40,000 a year raise. I agree with you. That's not going to happen. But we can deal with that in the contract. We've done that in the past, Gary. With Mike's contract, we wanted to move some things up, and we did that, and we felt good about it, and it was a fair deal for the taxpayers and a fair deal we thought for Mike. So I think you got to come up with the criteria and the results, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do with it.
So listen, I think that so our next meeting is actually in a few weeks. It's not even 2 weeks. It's in a few weeks. Our next meeting is February 12th. So that gives us some time. Mike, I know you wanted something in place yesterday, but as you can hear, it's just not going to happen. There's still plenty of dialogue, I think, that needs to happen. Robin, are you in the country at all in the next week or two? I mean, do you have time for this? I know you travel a ton, so
Yeah, good. Next 2 weeks are good.
Next 2 weeks are okay?
Mm-hmm. It has to be in the after work hours, but yes, I can make it in the next a late afternoon or something.
Okay.
Ones I can make.
Yeah, I think
I have Mike's email. I'll email Mike, and he can connect us with all of us on.
Okay, and it's an agreement too that within this meeting, we'll also come back to the board, and we'll talk to everybody about what we come up with. And then, we can have, even further dialogue at our next meeting, see what our thoughts are. I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with, how we're going to proceed. Okay, so this is not something that we're going to say, okay, this is it. Okay, you're going to have to live with it. And this goes on, both us and the FinCom. We'll have a discussion on February 12th. Hopefully at that time, everyone's in agreement and we can then vote on it. That would be my goal, okay, is that we have something that we can vote on. But if we don't, we don't. This is important enough for the foundation of this town moving forward that we're going to have to get this right. And if it's not right, it can have a lot of detrimental effects, for many years. So we're going to get this right. And Mike, February 12th was still okay, right? I know your concern is the budget. I get it. But
Just holding your feet to the fire.
I know. And but like I said, we're gonna have to talk about this further and again just get it right. So, David, we'll I'll work it out with Robin, Ed, and Mike and myself. We'll be in touch and we'll put something together. Is there a better day? Because I know you're very busy these days as well. Is there a better day of the week for you?
No, I mean, if it's later on in the afternoon, that's okay with me. This week coming is tough for me, but next week may be better.
Next week?
Yeah, next week is fine. Can I suggest that Mike email out to us all of the materials again? Looking at it the way it's scanned, it's all sideways on the computer. The system that we have there. So, Mike, can you maybe just email out all the materials again so we can have them in a spreadsheet?
Yes.
You send it in Excel rather than the PDFs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That would be better for me.
All right. So we'll definitely put that together. We'll focus on next week, okay, and we can set that up, okay.
All right. Good for me.
All right, David. I appreciate you. Your call. Are you gonna stay on, or are you gonna drop off?
I'll stay on as long as I can.
All right. So there's only two other quick things. We got appointments and approvals. We have a request from Dana Shuttleworth. Is that for appointment to the Board of Health? Thank you for coming, guys. Really
Thanks a
appreciate
lot,
it.
guys.
Robin, apologize to Ross. Tell him I owe him one.
All right.
So we got a request from Dana Shuttleworth for appointment to the Board of Health.
Yes, and the
I
Board
don't-
of Health, one of the members, Paul Thompson, talked with him and recommended him, and there was an email attached with his recommendation.
Okay.
The appointment.
All right. Any conversation from the board?
Nope. Do we have his name here? What was it? Shadow's gonna make a.
Dan Shuttleworth?
Is it Dana or Dan?
Yeah,
Dana.
that's your.
Yeah, Dana. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, left an A.
Oh, okay. Here. You want to make the motion?
Yeah, so, make a motion that we, approve Dana Shuttleworth, to the Board of Health, for, what's the term?
June 30th, 2020.
Till June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on the floor? Okay, if not, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Can I vote while I'm on the phone?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to do it in
We have to do roll call.
roll call
Fowler,
vote.
aye.
Sadler, aye.
Bonavita, aye.
Dawes, aye.
Surface aye.
All right. Unanimous. Okay. Thank you, David. And lastly, minutes of January 8th, 2018. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
No, I make a motion that we approve the minutes for January 18th,
No, 8th.
8th,
2018.
2018 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fowler, aye.
Oh, yeah.
Sadler, aye.
Bonavita, aye.
Dawes, aye.
David?
Surface aye.
All right.
Yep.
All right. So, anybody have any other further call. Yes, Mike.
I just want to update the board on the snow and ice deficit. We're up to negative 87,000.
Negative
Which
87?
is actually not bad. We're a third of the way through the winter, or more than a third.
Listen, that week and a half, I thought it was going to get much worse. Okay, thank you, Mike, for for that update. Does anybody need any other updates from Mike while we're here? No? All right. So for those who have stayed up, I certainly appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully it was beneficial for you. Our next meeting is February 12th at 7 o'clock here in this room.
If I can make just something on the selectmen's report? Won't be long.
Do you want to?
Huh?
You want to put something on?
No, just something I want to say on the selectmen's report. You know, you want to know what we mentioned one night, what are we all doing and this and that.
Sure. No, that's why I said, is there anything else on the table? Yeah, if you want to throw something in. Go ahead.
One thing I want to say a thank you to Janet because she followed what I asked for, and I see that it has page numbers on it. So thank you for that. No, it's just something came through some time ago from Homeland Security, and I just attended a seminar in Reading last Friday. It was all day, a lot to take in. I have met today with Police Chief Cudmore on this, and this was to government responses and resources for houses of worship and faith communities. And it was put on by Homeland Security. It was moderated by a U.S. attorney. I mean, there was a lot of big players there, FBI, MEMA. It was very informative, and we may be trying to put together something in the town with get together houses of worship and try to come up with some plan for safety, probably much like we do with schools and things of that sort, for disasters and other types of things that happen in today's world.
Yep.
So it was, just wanted to report that, I had done that as a member of the board.
Thank you.
And as a trustee of the Byfield Parish Church.
Okay. Actually, I do have one quick thing, and that is for FinCom, their yearly budgetary meetings with all the departments in town. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, February 9th?
Saturday, yep.
Saturday, yep, February 9th. No, that means it's the 10th, right? If Monday's the 12th, 11th, 10th, February 10th?
Must be the 10th, because we're meeting on the 12th, and that's a Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
So February 10th, 9 o'clock in this room. So if anybody wants to, it's an all-day event. So starting at 9 a.m. So if anybody does want to join those meetings, obviously budget season's here, and if you want to hear about anything the departments are doing, I would encourage you to sit in on some or all the proceedings. Okay. Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much to everybody. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Great. All those in favor?
Aye. Fowler, aye.
Feather, aye.
Bonavita, aye.
Aye. David?
Still there, Dave?
He's snoring.
No.
All right.
Adjourn.
Surface, aye.
Surface eye?
Yep, all set.
David, thank you very much. Hope the wife is doing well. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.